Chapter 249. Loopy Toad felt that its prophetic dream was a little like a pipe dream. However, the difference was that the legendary golden millet dream was a beautiful dream of enjoying a lifetime of glory, splendor, and wealth. When they woke up, even the rice hadn't been cooked. But Loopy Toad couldn't tell what was so special about its dream. Loopy Toad had no idea who that maniac in the dream with hundreds of magic swords behind him was, or who that fatty whose heart had been pierced by 100 swords was. Furthermore, Loopy Toad noticed that these people's faces were becoming more and more blurry in its mind. In its dream, these people's faces had clearly been uncensored in high definition, but after turning its head, they were just shadows in its mind. Loopy Toad scratched its dog head and looked a little irritated. It wanted to tell little Master Ling about this, but Wang Ling was still busy and had no time to pay attention to it. After thinking about it, Loopy Toad decided to first record what it had dreamed in its human observation diary, in case it forgot it later. After Wang Ling helped Jinka clean up, he found that Loopy Toad had already fallen asleep at the foot of the bed. Flipping through the study materials, he spent 2 minutes reviewing them, and another 3 to preview the upcoming course before he was ready to rest. After the military training, the pace of life slowed down again, and he returned to his favorite and most familiar pace. He always felt that collective life was not very suitable for him, but he also felt that it was not as bad as he imagined. However, even though the pace had slowed down, the things that he had to deal with had not decreased at all. Wang Ling already knew about Boss Tan, and had always felt that the master of Immortal Mansion's identity wasn't simple. At the very least, he was the most difficult person Wang Ling had encountered so far, and was even more troublesome than the old devil. General Yi had been able to successfully capture the old devil this time purely because the old devil hadn't yet recovered to his peak. Another reason was that this devil emperor was, after all, an upright man. He was far less cunning than the master of Immortal Mansion. When that young man from Immortal Mansion who had appeared under the hawthorn tree had come to cause trouble, Wang Ling remembered that he had left a spirit energy signal on his abyss avoidance sword, but until now, there had been no response. He didn't know whether this signal had been detected or not. As a dark force, the greatest taboo was for the location of their sect to be exposed. One thing was certain, the master of Immortal Mansion was definitely on guard against this. Now, they could only wait for further news from Boss Tan's younger brother, Tan Xian. At the desk, Wang Ling looked at Jinka and couldn't help raising his eyebrows. He didn't know whether the master of Immortal Mansion's ultimate goal was to forge a peerless divine sword, but there was one thing he could be sure of. This time, it must be June 21st, the 9th Tuesday of the semester. After school that day, Sheep appeared punctually in an alley next to number 60 high school and leaned against the wall, waiting for Wang Ling. Grenade-throwing senior immortal had originally been the one to take her to paint today, but because he had to help reconstruct the bodies of the delivery men from last time, he didn't have the time at all. So Wang Ling had taken Sheep instead. Just before school ended, Wang Ling received an address from Grenade-throwing senior immortal. The owner of this magic weapons shop was surnamed Luo, and he was a skilled smith himself. He had already cared for Sheep once before, so it should be said that he was very familiar with it. There was no need to worry about the technique. Moreover, Boss Luo was actually one of them. It was just that Boss Luo didn't like to chat online, so he didn't join the chat group. It was also Boss Luo who had repaired the pill furnaces that Immortal Toya had blown up previously. As soon as Wang Ling stepped out of the school gate, he could already sense Sheep's location. When he turned into the alley, he saw that Sheep was actually surrounded by a group of delinquents. These delinquents had dyed hair, nose rings and earrings, and some of them even had gold chains around their necks. Those who didn't know better would think that they were rappers who had come out of China's Siha variety show. Sheep's small body was surrounded in the middle of this group of delinquents. She was only 1.4 meters tall, shorter than Jinka. She was wearing a small gray windbreaker, and anyone who saw her fair and cute little face would want to take a bite out of it. At that moment, Sheep was forced to lean against the wall, her face expressionless. "Big brother, she looks like she's still a kid. Don't you know that there's a saying that Lolas have the body of a mature sister? This kind of kid is more fun to play with." The tattooed man with the 2 gold chains around his neck was breathing heavily. He looked Sheep up and down and was a little excited. Little friend, are you lost? Come with Big Brother will buy you a lollipop. I'll take you to play games. Looking at this scene from a distance, Wang Ling narrowed his eyes, but didn't intend to intervene. Reality proved that in the face of these hooligans and delinquents, the more taciturn you were, the more the other party would take advantage of you. After just a few words of provocation, the tattooed man with the gold chain straightaway decided to make a move. He stared at Sheep's bun and stretched out his hand. The bun was really too cute, and he couldn't help but want to pinch it. Unfortunately, as soon as his fingers got close, Sheep straightaway dodged to the side, causing him to grab nothing but air. Oh, you're pretty agile. The golden chain delinquent hadn't expected this little Lolita to move so quickly. Furthermore, after his provocation just now, the little Lolita's eyebrows were completely furrowed and her cheeks were puffed out slightly. She already looked a little angry. TSK, this was the kind of temper he liked. The golden chain delinquent chuckled, the expression on his face becoming even more vulgar as he directly stretched out his hand to grab Sheep. But Sheep's movements were really too fast. She moved like the wind. She was clearly just dodging left and right, but such a small distance actually created afterimages. The delinquent's jaws dropped in shock, because this definitely wasn't a speed that a normal human could produce. This little Lolita's movements were really too fast. It was impossible to catch her with the naked eye. It was obvious that she was a cultivator. But she was clearly just a child. The delinquents didn't dare believe the scene in front of them. Some of them wanted to dissuade the golden chain delinquent, but unfortunately, the golden chain delinquent lost his temper. Every time, he was so close to catching her. I catch. I catch. I still catch. I catch. I catch. However, every attack was dodged by Sheep by the side. 5 minutes later, the golden chain delinquent was so tired that he couldn't move anymore, and was gasping for breath with his hands on his knees. Bean-sized beads of sweat fell to the ground as he stared at Sheep and wiped it away, completely giving up on resisting. You can go, consider yourself lucky. Sheep raised her eyebrows and snorted, then walked out of the crowd of delinquents unscathed. Before she left, she tilted her head and cast a sidelong glance at the golden chain delinquent. It's only been 5 minutes and you're already done. Your endurance is really bad. After saying that, Sheep walked toward Wang Ling without looking back. Chapter 250. It was obvious that this golden chain delinquent had been poked in his sore spot by Sheep. He knelt on the ground and swore, there was once a cute Lolita in front of me, but I didn't cherish her. When I lost her, it was too late for regrets. There's nothing more painful than this in the world. If God could give me another chance, he would say, never, ever, play jumping left and right with a Lolita. The reason why Sheep had chosen to meet Wang Ling in the alley was that he liked to keep a low profile. But when Wang Ling took Sheep out of the alley, they still attracted a lot of attention. Sheep's pink hair buns formed a sharp contrast with her little gray windbreaker, which was really too eye-catching. She obediently followed behind Wang Ling, maintaining a distance of about 10 feet between them. Thus, when he took Sheep out, Wang Ling felt as if someone was watching him. If that was the case, he wouldn't be able to use teleportation, because he would definitely be discovered. Furthermore, he was still wearing his school uniform. If someone discovered his teleportation, Wang Ling felt that it would make the headlines tomorrow. A certain number 60 high school student could actually teleport? Was this a distortion of human nature, or a loss of morals? So, in the end, Wang Ling chose to take Sheep to Boss Luo's shop on the subway. After passing through the long overpass, which faced number 60 high school's Qingyun Road Line 1 subway, Wang Ling calculated that there were 8 stops in total between here and Wuliang Road. Since the founding of Huaxiu Nation, subway routes had crisscrossed each other, forming a dense and complex network that ran through the entire underground space like a spider's web. Although there were still many cultivators who chose to fly their swords to wherever they wanted to go, they had to pay a toll, and from time to time, they would be stopped to verify their personal information. In contrast, people only needed to go through a security check when they entered the station on the subway. Although it was slower than flying a sword, there were a lot fewer procedures and unnecessary troubles. The interior space of the subway cars had now been expanded using space expansion technology, so everyone could find a place to sit and it was no longer a crowded scene. When Wang Ling entered the subway, he saw all kinds of people, ordinary office workers with briefcases, as well as cultivators in strange clothes who exuded spirit energy. In order to determine whether a person was a cultivator or not, the most direct and reliable method was always through the perception of the soul sense, because you would never know whether a person wearing an ancient costume standing in front of you was a cultivator or a cosplayer. Ordinary people couldn't see the magic treasures that cultivators carried with them with their naked eyes, but that didn't mean they weren't dangerous. Thus, cultivators were restricted from carrying spirit swords and magic treasures when they entered the station. They had to be stored in storage bags and weren't allowed to be taken out or used. In the subway, there was a spatial magic treasure that could detect signals. Once a fluctuation was detected, a group of subway attendants would appear in front like the Red Guards. Wang Ling led Sheep through the emergency exit. Looking back, he was surprised to see an acquaintance. It was Li Miaozhen, Immortal Toya's disciple and Director Li, whom he had met at Second Hospital back then. Director Li was blocked by two subway security personnel at the security checkpoint, and the expression on his face was a little awkward. Watching from a distance, Wang Ling was surprised to find that Director Li's destination was actually also Boss Luo's place. Today, he was going to pick up a sword. Previously, he had left an immortal sword at Boss Luo's place for maintenance. He had originally planned to take the subway to pick it up, and when he got the spirit sword, he would fly the patient's urine sample to the branch hospital. In the end, he had unexpectedly been stopped at the subway security checkpoint. A security officer pointed at the glass bottle that Director Li was carrying. "Sir, what is that yellow thing in your glass bottle?" As the director of the hospital, Director Li had the obligation to protect the patient's privacy, so he refused to answer with a strong sense of righteousness. "I'm sorry, I can't tell you. Is this a poisonous and harmful substance?" The security personnel frowned and stared at Director Li with vigilance. "Director Li, of course not, security officer. If not, I'll treat you to a sip." Director Li, in the end, Wang Ling didn't choose to get involved in this mess. Shanghai City's subway security had always been very strict. Now that Director Li had been caught, he probably wouldn't be able to get out for another hour or so. The worst thing was that Director Li had come out in plain clothes this time. He wasn't wearing a white coat and didn't even have a work ID. It would be strange if he wasn't treated as a suspicious person when he was stopped with a bottle of an unknown yellow liquid. It just so happened that it was the evening rush hour after school, and today's subway traffic was as high as usual. Although there was no need to worry about not having a seat on the subway, the platform outside was still a little crowded. Sheep followed Wang Ling obediently. It was too crowded nearby, which made her feel a little uncomfortable, so she took the initiative to step forward and hold one of Wang Ling's fingers with her small hand. Wang Ling was blank, but when he saw the huge flow of passengers nearby, he let Sheep lead him. Sheep looked around curiously, blinking her eyes the whole way. Holding Sheep's hand, Wang Ling stood in front of the platform and waited for the subway. He could feel a lot of gazes in his direction, but he was sure that they weren't looking at him. They were all looking at Sheep. Anyone who saw a cute girl who looked like a porcelain doll couldn't help but take a second look. An old auntie stood behind Wang Ling. After staring at Sheep for a long time, she couldn't take it anymore and took the initiative to talk to Wang Ling. "Young man, are you taking your sister out to play?" Wang Ling was silent, then nodded his head. The auntie crouched down and stared at Sheep. The more she looked at her, the more she liked her. Her heart itched uncontrollably, and she wanted to pinch Sheep's face, but was a little embarrassed. "Ah, your sister is so cute. Is she your biological sister?" Wang Ling could only continue to nod. He didn't really want to talk to this auntie in front of him, but unfortunately, the moment she saw Sheep, she completely lost her mind. Older people always had a different kind of affection for children. "Your sister is so cute, and you're so handsome. Your mother must be a great beauty." As they chatted, the auntie took the opportunity to pinch Sheep's bun head. Surprisingly, Sheep didn't resist. In fact, it was Sheep who was thinking. She felt that since she had been personally enlightened by little Master Ling, her relationship with him should be even deeper than that of a sister. So all of a sudden, Sheep raised her head and looked at the auntie in front of her with a serious expression. "Auntie, I'm actually not his sister." Both Wang Ling and the auntie looked at Sheep in horror. Sheep pointed at Wang Ling. "He's my dad." Wang Ling, auntie, accompanied by the roar of the subway, the two of them were instantly thrown into confusion. Chapter 251. As soon as the subway doors opened, Wang Ling directly grabbed Sheep's hand and ran inside. The auntie in front of the platform was so shocked by Sheep's words that she was so stunned that she actually forgot to get on the train. By the time she came back to her senses, the train on line 1 had already sped off with the sound of the police siren closing the doors. In the subway workshop, Wang Ling held Sheep's hand with a slightly helpless expression on his face. Actually, there was nothing wrong with Sheep's understanding, but there were times when randomly calling someone dad without warning could really scare people into pissing their pants. Wang Ling didn't understand how a pure virgin like him, who was as white as a sheet of paper, could suddenly become a father. Actually, Sheep couldn't be blamed for this situation, because no one had ever explained things to her in the Wang family's small villa. Because Sheep was young, Pen and Eraser had worked together with all the gremlins in the Wang family's small villa to set up a rule that forbade telling dirty jokes in front of Sheep. Over time, this bunch of gremlins who talked nonsense every time they opened their mouths didn't really know how to talk to Sheep anymore. Wang Ling felt that he should find an opportunity in the future to give Sheep a good explanation and popularize some necessary knowledge, so as not to cause unnecessary trouble again. Boss Luo's shop was located at number 300 Wuliang Road in the old district of Songhai City. This was an old street with a very long history. Wang Ling had once heard people say that the reason this street was named Wuliang Road was because a venerable immortal Wuliang once had a mansion here. Some people said that this entire mansion had been built from the legendary divine Wuliang tree. In ancient times, the divine Wuliang tree had been a divine tree that could grow endlessly and reach the heavens. However, it was a pity that the immeasurable tree, which was recorded in history, had been destroyed by a few almighty beings during a war between nations. Even now, an old painting of the old mansion was still circulating online, and Wang Ling had seen it before. But that old painting was really too old, and Wang Ling couldn't judge the authenticity of the old mansion from it. But the one thing he could be sure of was that this old mansion was definitely no longer on Wuliang Road. Back when Huaxiao Nation had just been founded, all the major streets had been renovated, and rumor had it that this old residence left behind by immortal Emperor Immeasurable had died at the hands of a demolition team. Following the address, Wang Ling arrived at the door of a shop called Fatty Luo Metal. The style of the buildings on the Immeasurable Road was similar. They were all antique and didn't have any landmarks. He could only follow the house number to find the place he wanted to go. After the demolition team accidentally demolished the old house left behind by the Immeasurable Immortal, the government had been doing repair work. Later, they simply changed the entire Immeasurable Road into a street block. They also erected a statue of the Immeasurable Immortal at the end of the street, with a personal profile of the Immeasurable Immortal written under the statue. Then, the entire road inexplicably turned into the former residence of the immortal sovereign Immeasurable. Wang Ling seriously suspected that the person who had written the introduction probably didn't even know who venerated immortal Ba was. When Wang Ling took Sheep to the door of the shop, he noticed that the threshold of Boss Luo's shop was unusually high. It was more than half a meter high. He crossed the threshold with Sheep in his arms. As soon as he entered, he saw a fat man with a potbelly in a white sweatshirt and baggy pants leaning back in a bamboo chair, fanning himself with a palm leaf fan and a pipe in his mouth. Be careful when you enter. Although the threshold of our shop is made of wood, it's very valuable. Do you know the immeasurable wood? The last piece of immeasurable wood in the world is right here. Sensing that someone had entered the shop, Fatty Luo fanned himself and spoke without even looking. Seeing that the person hadn't responded for a long time, Fatty Luo opened his eyes slightly to take a look, and immediately jumped out of his chair in shock. So it's Ling Jinren, my apologies. Fatty Luo had never seen Wang Ling before, but he had seen Sheep before. He knew that the rumored Ling Jinren had brought Sheep here for a maintenance today, so he could deduce the identity of this youngster from sheep. Because of grenade-throwing senior immortal's crazy support for Wang Ling, the people in the chat group were very respectful of Wang Ling. Although Fatty Luo wasn't in the group, he was still a member. When the people in the chat group came to him for maintenance on their magic artifacts, they would more or less mention some of Ling Jinren's glorious deeds to him. It was a good thing that Wang Ling wasn't in the habit of casually bragging about his friends to others, otherwise this would be the legendary, mutual commercial bragging. Today was the first time Fatty Luo and Wang Ling met. Judging from his attire, he was a rather casual fatty, but at first glance, Wang Ling didn't find him annoying at all. On the contrary, he felt that he was quite amiable. Fatty Luo fumbled around in his underpants for a long time, and finally found a slightly yellowed business card in another pair of underpants hanging on a bamboo chair. He handed it to Wang Ling. Ling Jinren, this is my business card. If you need me for anything in the future, give me a call in advance. Wang Ling looked at the introduction on the business card, Fatty Luo Metal Shop Manager, Luo Chuang. After putting the business card away, Wang Ling began to carefully size up Fatty Luo's shop. It actually wasn't very big. There was a wooden counter at the entrance, and next to it was a lounge chair that Fatty Luo used to rest on. On either side of the counter were two large wooden cabinets that looked very heavy. Each wooden cabinet was densely packed with hundreds of drawers. At first glance, it looked a little like the structure of an old traditional Chinese medicine shop that specialized in treating psoriasis. The shop is a little messy, Ling Jinren, don't mind it. Seeing Wang Ling's expression, Fatty Luo chuckled. The cabinet on the left contains magic artifacts that have already been maintained. They're waiting for customers to pick them up. The cabinets on the right are still being maintained and repaired, and they have serial numbers on them. Every day, I'll fix a few of them according to the numbers. Hearing this, Wang Ling couldn't help raising his eyebrows. He hadn't expected Fatty Luo, who looked like a big, burly man, to be such a meticulous person. Grenade throwing and I have known each other for a long time, and we're all brothers. Before Ling Jinren came, grenade throwing specially called me, so there's no need to line up. Fatty Luo waved his palm leaf fan and smiled. His eyes were very small, only the size of mung beans. When he smiled, they became slits, and his eyeballs couldn't even be seen. Will it take long? Wang Ling asked telepathically without opening his mouth. Not long, not long. Ling Jinren, please sit here for a moment. I'll bring sheep into the inner room for repairs, it'll be ready soon. Looking at his watch, Fatty Luo beckoned sheep into the inner room. When they reached the inner room, Fatty Luo suddenly flipped his hand over and pulled open a drawer on the counter. I've prepared some snacks in this drawer. If Ling Jinren doesn't mind, feel free to try them. Snacks? Wang Ling walked closer to take a look. Good heavens, this entire drawer was filled with crispy noodle snacks of various flavors. Chapter 252. Wang Ling's first impression of Fatty Luo was that he was lazy on the outside, gentle on the inside, observant and enthusiastic. To be honest, Wang Ling was a little surprised to see this drawer full of crispy noodle snacks. He realized that although Fatty Luo didn't go into the chat group, he didn't receive any less information than the others. He even knew exactly what Wang Ling liked to eat. And the most important thing was that Fatty Luo was very strong. Wang Ling had noticed this as soon as he entered the shop. Although Fatty Luo's aura was well concealed, it still couldn't escape Wang Ling's perception. If a true expert wanted to know the depth of another person's realm, they couldn't just release their aura. Often, when the other party's aura was concealed, it was possible to accurately determine the other party's realm and strength through perception and formula calculations. And it was very obvious that Fatty Luo was a hidden expert. If Dharmarajas without the godly thunder inheritance were used as a unit of measurement, Fatty Luo's strength was equivalent to that of 1.5 Dharmarajas. Wang Ling didn't have to wait long outside the shop before Fatty Luo came out with sheep. After a series of maintenance and repairs, Sheep's face was glowing, her pink hair was even more vibrant than before, and the two little buns in her hair were as soft and adorable as puddings. Her originally fair little face was now glowing. This time, I gave her a new layer of durable paint and spirit wax. She's too fast, and the materials used for the maintenance couldn't keep up with the constant consumption at her absolute speed. I believe that after this maintenance, she should last longer than before, Luo Chuang said. Wang Ling nodded and thanked him. Brother Grenade Throwing has a card in my shop, and called me earlier to tell me that he'll pay for the maintenance. We're all brothers, and it's the first time I've met Ling Jinren, so I'll let him off the hook. Although the raw materials for my lacquer and wax aren't cheap, it's still affordable for my brothers to use. Fatty Luo waved his palm leaf fan and said with a smile, "It wasn't easy for Ling Jinren to come here this time, so I have a request." "Tell me about it." Wang Ling raised his eyebrows and directly spoke telepathically. His expression was very relaxed, because he had already known that things wouldn't be so simple. This fatty looked harmless, but his mind was quite meticulous. An enemy like this would be quite scary. Fatty Luo chuckled, the fat on his face wrinkling up like a meat bun. This hardware shop has been passed down from my ancestors. In addition to running it and doing some magic artifact repair and maintenance work, Ling Jinren should have heard that I'm also a smith. Fatty Luo laughed mischievously. Fatty Luo's eyes lit up. Wang Ling nodded. Of course he knew of Fatty Luo's identity as a smith. Even if Grenade Throwing hadn't told him, he could see it from the details. Because of refining all year round, a refiner's physique was usually very strong. Although Fatty Luo had some fat on his face, under the white shirt, there were actually pieces of exquisite muscle. Ling Zi, Chuang, and Ling Zs Ling King, and Li. Ling Chen, Fatty Ling smiled. I Fatty Yang said, I say, you, I said, Yuan, you, and, Yuana say, Ling Ling, said, I said, I, of the. Chin, I, S Ling honest, I, Ling, I, very, I honest, the, I, had, Ling. Oh, so he wanted to see Jinka. Spirit light directly flashed in Wang Ling's hand, and then Fatty Luo saw a peachwood sword 1 meter and 20 centimeters long appear steadily in his hand. Actually, letting someone see one's personal spirit sword was quite a private matter. Fatty Luo had thought that Wang Ling would refuse. After all, this was their first meeting, but Wang Ling's attitude was astonishingly straightforward. Then, Fatty Luo stared blankly at Jinka. He felt that he couldn't move his eyes away. Although it was just a peachwood sword, the patterns on it were impeccably exquisite. Fatty Luo couldn't help stretching out his hand, but before he could touch Jinka's blade, he could already feel the invisible sword chi lingering around the wooden sword. It has its own protective sword chi? Fatty Luo turned pale with shock. He had come into contact with countless spirit swords, but had never seen one that could continuously produce protective sword chi without its owner's spirit energy activating it. Could this be the legendary, immortal move machine? Fatty Luo's hand paused in midair. In that moment, the fat on his face trembled, and his heart was filled with unprecedented excitement. Ling Jinren, can you put the sword on the sword tray on the counter? Fatty Luo was extremely excited as he wiped away his tears and asked Wang Ling. Wang Ling nodded and put Jinka on the sword tray. Fatty Luo didn't dare directly touch Jinka, which had its own protective sword chi. Instead, after Wang Ling put Jinka on the sword tray, he put down the palm leaf fan in his hand, put on a pair of white gloves, and lit the incense burner on the side. The incense in this incense burner has the effect of soothing a sword spirit. It was given to me by a friend of mine, whose family makes incense for generations. His surname is Gu, and I'll introduce him to Ling Jinren when I have the chance. In short, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Fatty Luo put the lid on the incense burner and looked at Wang Ling gratefully. Then, he stood respectfully in front of Jinka and bowed to him. I've offended Lord Jinka. Wang Ling saw Fatty Luo's Adam's apple roll up and down as he slowly touched the sword. Fatty Luo hadn't felt this way in a very long time. He had seen countless spirit swords and magic weapons in this world, but this was the first time in 100 years that he had seen a spirit sword that had instantly stunned him with just one look. Good sword. Luo Peng held Jinka in admiration. He did his best to restrain his excitement and prevent his hands from trembling too much. Holding up his miniature magnifying glass, he looked at the sword from tip to hilt for a very long time, as if he was examining a beautiful object. After looking at it for a full 5 minutes, Fatty Luo put Jinka back on the sword tray and sighed deeply. As the rumors say, Lord Jinka's sword is perfect and impeccable. There's almost no flaw to be found. If you insist on a flaw, perhaps there's a fly in ointment. Wang Ling couldn't help raising his head curiously at Fatty Luo's words. May I ask Ling Zhenren if Lord Jinka has a scabbard? Fatty Luo took off his white gloves and habitually picked up his palm leaf fan and slowly fanned himself. The perfection of a sword isn't just in the sword itself, the scabbard is also a very important part. If the sword is the soul, then the scabbard is the flesh. Lord Jinka's body is constantly protected by sword chi, but without the protection of a scabbard, there will definitely be drawbacks in the future. Scabbard. When Fatty Luo said this, Wang Ling already remembered everything. Actually, when Father Wang had bought Jinka, he had a scabbard. But at that time, his hand had been itchy, and he had directly crushed the scabbard. So at that time, only Jinka's original body had survived. Chapter 253. It wasn't that Jinka didn't have a scabbard, but that Wang Ling had crushed it when he was a child. There was a mysterious substance in Jinka's blade that Wang Ling still hadn't been able to see through to this day, and it had an important effect on restricting Wang Ling. But this substance was different from the special substance in the Dao Talisman seal that Wang Ming had given him. It wasn't the kind of thing that would make Wang Ling feel powerless upon contact. This peachwood sword was just a street item that Father Wang had picked up from a flower and bird market, and Wang Ling still hadn't clearly investigated its origin. Back then, Jinka had actually been born as a sword spirit 6 years ago, when the gate between worlds had first descended. There had been a time when Wang Ling had even wondered if Jinka had something to do with the gate between worlds. But later he realized that it had just been a coincidence. Because Jinka's sword chi was too righteous and didn't have the slightest bit of evil in it, it could be hung over a bedside table to ward off evil, and it could be lifted to slay demons and behead devils. Wang Ling suspected that Jinka had been born after absorbing the essence of socialist core values. Thinking about it carefully, Wang Ling felt that this was the first time he had noticed the scabbard. Because Wang Ling had crushed Jinka's scabbard when he was very young, he hadn't paid any attention to it at all. Even when he usually helped Jinka clean the blade, he hadn't noticed it. So when he heard Fatty Luo's words, Wang Ling stared at Jinka on the sword hilt and pondered deeply. As Fatty Luo said, it went without saying that a scabbard was a great help to a sword. Not every sword could automatically generate protective sword chi like Jinka could. In the absence of a scabbard, more spirit swords would be corroded. Although Jinka had protective sword chi, that didn't mean that the scabbard wasn't important. The sword itself accounted for 70% of a spirit sword's overall power, while the scabbard accounted for 30%. When the two were combined, a spirit sword's power could be maximized. Lord Jinka's body is already very powerful. If you can find a suitable scabbard for him, he'll become a truly peerless godly sword with extraordinary power. Fatty Luo looked at Jinka and sighed regretfully. Waving his palm leaf fan, he looked at Wang Ling and wanted to say something, but in the end he opened his mouth and didn't say anything. Fatty Luo looked at the time and realized that it was still quite early. Wang Ling had come over right after school with sheep, and including the time spent on the road, it had taken him less than an hour to finish the care. After a round of maintenance, Sheep was clearly in much better spirits than before, and she blinked curiously as she sized up Fatty Luo's shop. Apart from the magic treasures already in the cabinets on the left and right, there were also some magic treasures from Fatty Luo's collection. Fatty Luo openly hung these magic treasures on the wall for display, and each magic treasure had its own spirit power protective cover. To be honest, Ling Zhenren, these magic treasures are my proudest collection. Fatty Luo chuckled. I've looked for an expert from a proper department to appraise every single one of them, and they're 100% authentic. Furthermore, they've all been preserved, so if any of them are damaged, we'll get 95% of the compensation. Sheep's gaze swept around before landing on an item that resembled an armor made of beast hide. It was a flesh-colored beast skin armor that was covered in fur. There was also a helmet on the armor, and there were 2 huge fangs on the left and right sides of the helmet. What's this? Sheep asked as she stretched out her little finger. Have you heard of the heavenly demon pig? Fatty Luo asked. The sheep blinked and shook her head. It was actually a heavenly demon pig? Wang Ling's eyes lit up, because he had read about it in historical records. The sky demon pig was the first demon king to come out of the gate between worlds when it first appeared. At that time, the sky demon pig's arrival had caused an apocalyptic flood. And the most troublesome thing was the heavenly demon pig's super body. In its super body state, this demon pig's defense was at its peak, and it was as tough as a demon god's. In that battle, if General Yi hadn't seized the opportunity when the heavenly demon pig's super body weakened, he would have been able to kill it in one blow and stop the damage in time. The consequences would have been unthinkable. In order to get this pig's skin and tusks, I paid a huge price and went through many twists and turns. In the end, I managed to get my hands on this pig's skin. I originally wanted to use it to make a full set of robes, but unfortunately, there weren't many raw materials left, so I used it to make a set of animal skin armor. As long as you put it on and activate it with spirit energy, you'll have the super body effect for a short period of time. There are a lot of so-called authentic heavenly demon pig skin armor circulating on the market now, but they're all fake. Mine is the only one that's authentic. Fatty Luo waved his palm leaf fan as he looked at the pig skin armor he had made, his heart full of pride. I was invited to an auction once, and when I realized that someone was actually selling heavenly demon pig skin armor, I was so angry. Does he really think his fake pig armor is the best in the world? Wang Ling, everyone had their own pride and things they were proud of. Take Fatty Luo for example. He wasn't someone who cared about his appearance, because he had once been handsome. Who hadn't had a moment of peerless beauty? But Fatty Luo had realized 100 years ago that good looks didn't have the slightest king use to him. Becoming an outstanding weaponsmith was the most important thing to him, and the various magic treasures he had collected over the past several hundred years were what he was most proud of. Apart from this heavenly demon pig skin armor, there were actually quite a few other items in the shop that Fatty Luo treasured. Wang Ling was surprised to find that most of Fatty Luo's collection was actually defensive equipment. In the past several hundred years, I've traveled all over the country and collected the toughest defensive equipment I could find. Fatty Luo grinned. Of course, my greatest wish is to be able to create a peerless godly sword that can easily destroy all this defensive equipment. As he said this, Fatty Luo's gaze abruptly pointed behind the door of the shop. Wang Ling and Sheep followed his gaze and immediately saw a shield hanging behind the door. It was a dark blue shield, and its surface was covered with layers of scales that were arranged in an orderly manner like fish scales. At first glance, this shield didn't look like anything new, but it actually gave off a faint aura of the deep sea, and when you sensed it carefully, you actually felt like you were drowning and suffocating. What was this? Wang Ling narrowed his eyes, and somehow felt that this thing wasn't simple. This is a shield made from the scales of the western deep sea water spirit hog dun. Its skin is quite thick, and its defense is enhanced in places with water, such as rainy days, lakes, the sea and so on. Fatty Luo said, it's also called Huadun for short. Chapter 254. It was June 22nd on Wednesday in the 9th week of the semester. Later, this day would be recorded in the annals of history. Because it happened to be the day the old devil would be put on trial. The old devil had been arrested at a military base on the outskirts of Songhai City, along with the master of Shadow Stream, Jiang Luiyue, who had been trapped in the stone ghost mask at the time. The plan to capture the old devil had been discussed beforehand, so in the end, the old devil was directly sent to Songhai First Prison to be interrogated on the spot. In fact, since the day the old devil had been arrested, online news and public opinion had already been flooded with comments online. Any news about the old devil would have tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of comments. This was enough to show the old devil's social influence. This was a figure who had struck fear and awe into the hearts of the entire Huaxiao nation back then. Dubbed Devil Emperor Gua Pai, he had been known as the leader of the biggest evil force back then. Wang Ling had always felt that if there was a prize for the biggest dark force, the Gua Pai army which the old devil had led back then would definitely be second to none. At 6:00 in the morning, in the interrogation room of Songhai First Prison, the old devil was still in Zhang Liuyue's body as it sat obediently in a wooden chair. It was still wearing the spirit shackles as it faced Warden Liang, General Yi, Secretary Dakang, and a group of senior prison officers. 8 people were sitting in a row in front of the old devil, and next to them was a live broadcast camera. In order to show how much importance the government attached to this matter, and at the same time to respond to some rumors online, General Yi's interrogation this time was open and transparent, and was directly being broadcasted live. "Is everything ready?" General Yi tilted his head and asked a staff member next to him. "Everything is ready, General Yi. We'll start directly when the live broadcast host cuts in and the camera turns green." The staff member bent over and pointed at the camera in front of him as he replied softly, "The host just did a warm-up before the live broadcast. Currently, it's ranked first in TV ratings, and in less than 5 minutes since the live broadcast started, there are already more than 20 million people watching the live broadcast online. Based on this trend, it's estimated that when the interrogation starts, it'll break 100 million. Hearing this, General Yi's eyes abruptly dimmed a little. He hadn't expected this devil to still be so influential after so many years. "What is General Yi thinking about?" asked the staff member when he saw General Yi's somewhat profound gaze. "It's fine." General Yi scratched his head. "It's just that the higher-ups told me that it'd be best if the viewership for this live broadcast of the trial didn't exceed that of the Spring Festival Gala. That's why the situation is a little awkward." The staff. "Then, should we begin?" General Yi looked at the old devil and took a deep breath. "Let's rehearse first." The staff. 5 minutes later, the old devil faced the camera. As soon as the staff member said, "Begin," the old devil cooperatively lowered his head and started to repent. "I was wrong, I was really wrong. I shouldn't have barged into the National Palace because of some personal issues. The destruction of people's property and life safety has a very bad impact on society." General Yi, "Then what about the previous delivery men?" The old devil, "My venerable self is very sorry about the rice ball delivery incident. But my venerable self has kept the souls of those delivery men. Those delivery men whose souls dissipated under the sun in the news have actually been kept in the small world of my purple gold gourd." General Yi nodded and glanced at the question on the paper, then asked, "Can you briefly explain to the public what happened before and after you were arrested?" "Before the battle, I wanted to infiltrate the small world to absorb the vitality of those children and activate the body rotation array to revive myself. But unfortunately, the plan failed. After that, I was locked down by the 5 elements great array and couldn't escape." The old devil raised his head and stared at the camera. "In the end, I lost to General Yi's palm heart sword." General Yi held up 4 fingers. "Do you know, what you did can only be described with 4 words. Everyone around him, outrageous." General Yi, 4 more words. "Everyone around him, you're insane." The old devil, "Now that we have concrete evidence of your crime, we'll follow the procedure and send you to the Supreme Court. Do you have anything else to say?" As soon as General Yi finished speaking, a staff member on the side suddenly called for a halt. General Yi frowned. "What's going on? What's the problem?" A female screenwriter came up to General Yi and whispered in his ear with a slightly embarrassed expression, "There's nothing wrong with the basic procedure. But there's something wrong with the way you express your emotions." After that, the female screenwriter looked at the old devil and said, starting with the line, "My venerable self was wrong. Mr. Devil Emperor should look a little more downcast. It would be best if you could express the grief of a broken family and broken up family." The old devil, the female screenwriter, "Although it sounds a little difficult, it would be best if Mr. Devil Emperor could squeeze out a few tears. That would be better." The old devil, the female screenwriter lowered her head and looked at the script in her hand. There's one more thing. I hope Mr. Devil Emperor can describe in detail how General E used the palm heart sword. The script has already been written, so Mr. Devil Emperor can take a good look at it later and memorize it in 2 or 3 minutes. During the narration, you have to show fear of the palm heart sword. The old devil, General E, after hearing the female screenwriter's words, even Secretary.com was shocked. Is that necessary? During General Yi's rehearsal, the higher-ups were also watching, and they unanimously agreed that this part needed to be strengthened. On one hand, it would reflect General Yi's strength, and on the other hand, it would bring about positive energy in society and set an example for the vast number of cultivation students who are still learning, the female screenwriter replied. General E, there's another matter that requires General E and Secretary.com to make a decision together, the female screenwriter said. What is it? While the host was on the field just now, the CEO of Cultivation Hardware and Concealed Weapons Technology, Evil Monarch Jun Xia, sect leader AI of the Five Elements sect, and sect leader Su of the Exploding Sky sect all sent congratulatory messages in the bullet screen. Secretary.com raised his eyebrows. Isn't that a good thing? They're all celebrities in the cultivation circle. It's very meaningful for them to spread positive energy in society. The problem is that after sect leader Su of Exploding Sky sect sent his congratulatory bullet messages, he sent 3,000 yachts. After that, sect leader AI of Five Elements sect didn't want to be outdone and sent 3,001 yachts in return. After that, Lord Jun Xia also followed suit. In just 3 minutes, the number of yachts exceeded 10,000. The host would like to ask, should we express our congratulations? The female screenwriter asked. Chapter 255. According to the analysis of relevant experts in the media, the live broadcast of the trial should be the first great feat in Huaxiu Nation in recent years. While the whole nation would be educated about the basic law through the live broadcast, it would also greatly intimidate those criminals in the dark and suppress the arrogance of the evil forces. That morning, Wang Ling was still gnawing on his bread when he saw the number of viewers of the live broadcast increase at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than 10 minutes after the start of the broadcast, it had already broken 100 million. Then, Wang Ling saw the server crash just like that. When he opened the live broadcast room again, a huge 404 popped up on the screen. Wang Ling, the old man, didn't know how to use a cell phone to watch a live broadcast, and when he saw that Wang Ling's page had turned into a 404, he straightaway sighed. Like I said, this high-tech stuff is sometimes unreliable. It's better to just watch the live broadcast on TV. After saying that, the old man reached out to turn on the TV with practiced ease. As expected, the live broadcast on TV was relatively stable, but there were no rows of bullet messages or the shock of a bunch of bigwigs flaunting their wealth and showering each other with gifts. In fact, there were only 3 types of people who were concerned about the live broadcast of the old devil's trial. The first type were mostly middle-aged and elderly people who were genuinely concerned about how the situation would develop. They were also very concerned about the old devil's final outcome. The second type were young people. Most of them were concerned about the social impact of this incident and the impact it would have on their future lives and jobs. According to the media, there were even some young entrepreneurs who had already registered trademarks for Old Devil and Devil Emperor Guapai. Just like the blue thin mushroom incident a while ago. The third type were young people. These people were usually relatively simple-minded, and most of them only watched live broadcasts online. Furthermore, they didn't care about the incident itself. They only liked to watch the bullet messages and watch the big shots in the cultivation world who appeared in the live broadcast room and showered them with gifts. But Wang Ling didn't feel that he belonged to any of these 3 types of people. He felt that he was more of a melon citizen, or the so-called melon-eating masses. The old man crossed his legs as he watched the TV. At that moment, the live broadcast had already started to show the old devil's confession. He saw the old devil sitting in a chair, confessing his crimes with a sorrowful expression on his face. The old man looked at it for a long time, and the expression on his face turned a little complicated as he looked at Wang Ling. Lingzi, do you know something? Wang Ling lowered his head and didn't respond. Although he had been at the scene of the devil's capture, he had promised Immortal Toya and General E that he wouldn't say a word about what had happened there. The old man stared at the TV for a while. When he saw the old devil wiping his tears, he simply turned the TV off. Her tears aren't good at acting. The old man clicked his tongue. As a chef, the old man had faced countless diners and seen all kinds of expressions. Like the old devil's, he could tell at a glance. There's a saying, the old man rubbed his chin in thought, and finally came up with a comment that was very suitable for the old devil's mood at the moment. You look like you're crying, but you're cursing in your heart. Wang Ling, sure enough, when Wang Ling returned to school today, the topic of discussion early in the morning was all about the live broadcast of the trial. In fact, when the old devil had been arrested, all the students of the 6 schools who had been in the military training had witnessed it. But apart from Wang Ling, who had been the closest to the scene, no one had clearly seen what had happened. From the perspective of most of the students at the time, they had only seen the magnificent and massive 5 elements great array. The light from the 5 elements great array was so dazzling, like the 5 spirit pearls sealing the demon lock pagoda, that people couldn't open their eyes. By the time they reacted, the old devil had already been arrested. Even when he had been arrested, the security at the scene had been surprisingly good, and a lot of curious students had wanted to see the true face of this legendary devil emperor, but had been stopped by the instructors. All in all, there had been a lot of regrettable things during the survival contest. So during the morning self-study period, someone recalled the specific details of that day through the live broadcast of the old devil's interrogation and felt that it was a pity. I wonder if there were any witnesses who were closer to the old devil when he was captured. I had no idea that the purpose of setting up the 5 elements great array was to capture the old devil. This was a confidential mission, of course we couldn't have known. Super Chen also sighed. And now that I think about it, it's very likely that we weren't allowed to bring our phones during the military training to prevent us from taking pictures at the scene of the arrest. Saying this, Super Chen had a mysterious look in his eyes. Actually, did you notice that a lot of mysterious things happened during the military training this time, such as, someone asked. During the military training, Dopey, classmate Wang Ling and I were in the same group, but at the start of the survival contest, Dopey had an upset stomach, so we were separated at the initial transmission stage. After that, I smoothly met up with classmate Wang Ling in the small world's desert. And then? That's the weird part. Super Chen frowned. I suddenly fainted halfway through. When I woke up, I found Loopy Toad, and then classmate Wang Ling suddenly disappeared. I seriously suspect that I was kidnapped by some unknown creature in the small world. Everyone, Wang Ling, the reason why Super Chen felt that the survival contest this time was a little baffling was actually because of Wang Ling. Because after the contest, Wang Ling had followed Wang Ming's request and erased his memories of Wang Ming. That was why Super Chen felt that his memories of the survival contest had become a little baffling. Of course, this wasn't the most frightening thing, because Wang Ling had made some mistakes when he had erased Wang Ming's memories. Although he had deleted Wang Ming's memories, there were still some details that he hadn't completely erased. He had forgotten to delete the no-show wave technique that Wang Ming had passed on to Super Chen and Dopey Gua at the time. Of course, neither Super Chen nor Dopey Gua had told anyone about this. At that moment, the expressions on their faces were a little crafty. After all, it was hard for normal people to understand this feeling of a sudden epiphany, like a protagonist in a novel. Mom, your son has finally had an epiphany. So at that moment, Super Chen's mood was a little complicated. Apart from excitement, he was also indescribably touched. He looked at his hands in disbelief. Wang Ling saw that they were trembling slightly. Chapter 256. The live broadcast of the Old Devil's trial was a major event, and hundreds of millions of people in Huaxiao Nation would be paying attention. Fatty Luo was one of them. Fatty Luo's hardware shop was old, and even the cabinets were made of wood. Fatty Luo usually didn't have the habit of watching the news, nor did he watch TV shows. All his news came from the mouths of customers and the brothers and sisters who came to the shop for maintenance on the magic artifacts. That morning, for the first time ever, Fatty Luo paid attention to the old devil's trial. He didn't have a TV in his shop, so he could only use a mirror-like magic treasure to simulate a TV signal. Therefore, when he entered the door that morning, he saw a fat man with poopy hair, wearing a white sweatshirt and baggy pants looking at himself in the mirror. However, this fatty was not showing off. He was truly concerned about the affairs of the country. "Yo, good morning." At this moment, a man in white suddenly stepped over the threshold and greeted him. Fatty Luo looked up and was a little surprised to see who it was. "Why are you here so early?" "I still have some matters to attend to in the afternoon, so I decided to come early to collect my sword. You promised me that I would let you borrow the 7-star sword to study for 5 days, and then help me give this 7-star sword a full body maintenance. You haven't forgotten, have you?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal bent over slightly with both hands on the wooden cabinet, his face wreathed in smiles. "Of course I won't forget. It's just a set of healthcare. It won't take much effort or money." Fatty Luo waved his hand and pointed to the cabinet on the right. "It's in cabinet number 24 on the right. Take it yourself." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal found it hard to believe Fatty Luo's frankness. He remembered that the last time this fatty had asked him for the 7-star sword, he hadn't been like this. He had almost knelt down and hugged his legs. "I've heard of Immortal Genuine's fame before, so I've always had high hopes for the 7-star sword. But when I got it from you, it only gave me a few hours of warmth." Fatty Luo put down the mirror in his hand, slowly raised his head, and said in all seriousness, "The 7-star sword's ability to move earth and wood is no small matter. It's indeed very powerful, but there's also a big drawback, which is that it has very high requirements for the sword owner. The spiritual power consumption is almost 4 times that of a spirit sword of the same grade." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, "So what do you mean?" "So, even though the 7-star sword is ranked very high on the sword list. However, it was also true that this sword was not practical. It was not suitable for everyone. It's only suitable for those cultivators who are born with extremely high basic reserves of spiritual energy. In other words, they are the so-called chosen ones." Fatty Luo spread his hands. "If I were to rank the sword list, this 7-star sword wouldn't even make it into the top 10. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was stupefied when he heard this, because he remembered that this fatty hadn't said that a few days ago. "Didn't you say before that this 7-star sword is simply a wonderful and impeccable sword? It's only been a few days." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was speechless. "That was before, this is now." Fatty Luo pursed his lips. "I've seen so many spirit swords, what haven't I seen before? It's just that when I saw that Jinka in Ling Jinren's hand recently, I realized that I was just a frog at the bottom of a well." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, "Is it that exaggerated? You don't understand." Fatty Luo sked. "From tip to tail, Lord Jinka is impeccably handsome. The only regret is that it doesn't have a scabbard. Nowadays, there really aren't many spirit swords like Lord Jinka's, which are energy efficient, powerful, beautiful, and righteous." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw that Fatty Luo's eyes were bursting with light when he said this. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Fatty Luo looked at the mirror, which was still playing the old devil's interrogation. His gaze was a little deep. "Look, no matter what kind of person they are, and how much of a false reputation they once carried on their shoulders. Just like this 7-star sword of yours, in the end, won't they all be past their prime? So a civilian spirit sword like Lord Jinka, who isn't on the sword list, is a peerless godly sword in the truest sense. Of course, I'm not targeting your 7-star sword. It wasn't until I met Lord Jinka that I realized." Fatty Luo narrowed his eyes and smiled. "All the spirit swords here are trash." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could already tell that this Fatty Luo had completely turned into a fanboy. "By the way, do you have any leads on the place I asked you to look for?" As the two of them talked, Fatty Luo suddenly raised his head to look at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. He remembered that he had asked Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to look for the coordinates of a secret land. That place was called Devil Valley, and was rumored to be a secret land that opened once every 100 years. It had a longer history than the Gate Between Worlds. Devil Valley didn't sound like a good place, but according to historical records, the scenery inside was picturesque. It was the kind of place where you could casually take a picture and use it as a screensaver. And the most important thing was that it was rumored that Devil Valley contained rare materials that were already extinct in the annals of history. I asked Little Black to monitor some fluctuations that are very similar to Devil Valley. Based on the year, Devil Valley will indeed open again this year. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pursed his lips. But I still want to know why you're going to Devil Valley. I'm going to make something. If I succeed, it'll be the glory of my life, Fatty Luo said proudly with a wide smile on his face. You want to make a sword? That was my goal in the past. I wanted to make a spirit sword that could easily destroy all the defensive equipment in my room. But after meeting Lord Jinka, I think it's impossible to realize this wish in this lifetime. Fatty Luo sighed a little regretfully, then raised his head with a hopeful look in his eyes. So, I'm going to make a peerless scabbard for Lord Jinka. Is that your latest goal in Devil Valley? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal raised his eyebrows. That's right. Fatty Luo smiled. According to my original plan, I wanted to find a special compatible material like the 1000 dried bone in Devil Valley. 1000 dried bone? Even if it's in Devil Valley, it should be very rare. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed. The 1000 dried bone that Fatty Luo was talking about was a compatible material in ancient times that could be used as an ingredient in elixirs to restore chi and blood. Back then, however, it had mostly been used to increase the stability of holy weapons. Unfortunately, because it took too long to grow and because of excessive harvesting, it had gone extinct very early on. Even if it really existed in Devil Valley, it was actually quite limited. It was obvious that Fatty Luo was well aware of this. I know that even if there really is 1000 dried bone in Devil Valley, it's extremely rare. If I use it to make a godly sword, this meager amount of 1000 dried bone won't be enough at all. But if I use this material to make a peerless scabbard, it'll definitely be enough. Speaking up to this point, Fatty Luo smiled devilishly. Chapter 257. The legend of Devil Valley wasn't a secret in the cultivation circle at all, and a lot of people had been looking for its entrance all these years. Whether it was at home or abroad, even cultivators from the West had their eyes on this treasure trove. Devil Valley contained resources that were extinct in the modern world. If one could contract Devil Valley like the owner of a fish pond, reaching the pinnacle of one's life wouldn't be a pipe dream. Most people looked for Devil Valley for the sake of profit, but Fatty Luo had his own pursuits. His goal in entering Devil Valley was just to find a 1000 dried bone. A 1000 dried bone was an essential material to create a peerless scabbard. So when he saw the hope on Fatty Luo's face and the boundless hope in his eyes, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was instantly a little flustered. Little Black has only detected some fluctuations that seem to be from Devil Valley, but can't be completely sure yet. If you want to enter Devil Valley, you'll have to rely on some luck, said Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. What he said was actually already very clear. Devil Valley was like a land of peach blossoms, which most people could only come across but not search for. There were very few recorded cases of people successfully entering Devil Valley. Furthermore, after many people walked out of Devil Valley, although it was said that they brought out the so-called extinct resources in Devil Valley, they had completely forgotten about their training in Devil Valley. So there was another theory: Devil Valley actually didn't exist at all. The real Devil Valley was nothing more than an illusion set up by an ancient almighty. The reason why people said that they had brought out extinct resources from Devil Valley was actually because they had been hit by an illusion spell. This information wasn't a secret, whether it was Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal or Fatty Luo Chuang, they were as clear as a mirror. And it was very clear that Fatty Luo wasn't willing to give up. No matter what, I want to give it a try. Ever since I met Lord Jinka, I knew that my dream of creating a peerless godly sword had been shattered. No matter how I make a sword, it's impossible for me to surpass Lord Jinka. Speaking up to this point, Fatty Luo held up Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's hands with an excited expression on his face. So, whether or not I can create a peerless scabbard is all up to you, Brother Lei. The corners of grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's mouth twitched abruptly, and he pulled Fatty Luo's oily hands away in disdain as he tried to maintain a smile. I'll try. It was still June 22nd, the 9th Wednesday of the semester. A lot had happened that morning because of the Old Devil's live broadcast of the trial. Teacher Pan had no choice but to come to the class early to start suppressing the riot. This was because the noise in class that morning was no longer what she had heard when she had just stepped out of the office. According to Teacher Pan, she had already heard the clamor in class as soon as she came out of the subway next to the school. It could only be said that as a pioneer teacher at number 60 high, Teacher Pan was in the end Teacher Pan. It was said that the teacher in charge had a good ear, and Wang Ling felt that this wasn't false at all, but suppression aside, Teacher Pan seemed to be in a particularly good mood today. All the crows in the world were black. All the head teachers in the world liked to do one thing, and that was to compare the students in their own class with the students in other classes. Teacher Pan rolled up her sleeves and propped both hands on the lectern as she sighed in exasperation. I don't know what to say to all of you. The gap between our number 60 high school's elite classes is growing wider by the day. Can't you learn from Fang Xing in the next class? Wang Ling abruptly raised his head at this name. Because he seemed to have heard it somewhere. But he had only heard this name recently, after the survival contest. It was only later that Wang Ling learned that Fang Xing was a new transfer student. Furthermore, he had transferred from a neighboring city and was directly placed in the elite class. Number 60 high school only had 2 elite classes in total. One was grade 1, class 3, which Wang Ling was in, and the other was grade 1, class 2. Fang Xing was a new transfer student in grade 1, class 2. Dopey Gua had wanted to talk about this in the morning, but the news of the live broadcast of the Old Devil's trial was too big, and everyone had chosen to ignore the new transfer student, just like Wang Feng, whose headlines had been stolen. In the morning class, Teacher Pan was already very generous in her praise of the new transfer student. But this still wasn't enough to satisfy the students' curiosity. Therefore, as soon as the class was over, Dopey Guo was surrounded. Lotus Sun and Feather Lin had been sent next door as representatives to sound out this classmate Fang Xing. Any news on the transfer student? Where did he transfer from? Super Chin asked curiously. Have you heard of Tianchi Imperial High School? Dopey Guo sked. Everyone shook their heads. Rather than not knowing this high school, it would be better to say that they hadn't even heard of it. An uncle told me that it's Jinghua City's aristocratic high school, and it's built on a spirit mountain. Although it's an aristocratic high school, not everyone can attend it. Every year, the selection process is very strict, and the number of students admitted is limited. Dopey Guo cupped his chin, a thoughtful expression on his face. So, this Fang Xing's identity definitely isn't simple. Since his school is so good, why did he choose to come to our number 60 high school? Someone asked. I heard from my uncle that if you want to study at Tianchi Imperial High School, you have to buy a house in the school district next to the school. Classmate Fang's family has now moved to Songhai City, which is why he chose to transfer. As for why he chose number 60 high school, I don't know. Dopey Guo spread his hands helplessly. But apart from that, I also heard that this classmate Fang Xing has already caused 3 major events in his short one day at number 60 high school. Which 3? The first is that as soon as classmate Fang Xing arrived at the school, he directly challenged clan leader Yu. Clan leader Yu and he exchanged blows with a wooden sword used in teaching. After the two of them exchanged blows, classmate Fang Xing's wooden sword was completely unscathed, while clan leader Yu's sword directly turned into sawdust. When the wind blew, it directly turned into sand. Classmate Fang Xing said that his sword technique was called, "You are the wind, I am the sand." Dopey Guo said. Everyone, the second event was at the reception for the new students. Old Antique went to explain our school culture to classmate Fang Xing, but in the end, classmate Fang Xing fell asleep. Thus, Old Antique threw a piece of chalk at classmate Fang Xing, and he caught it. Everyone, the last event was also the most frightening. In order to welcome classmate Fang Xing, Mother Wan specially made a dish for him to eat. Dopey Guo said. Just hearing the two words, Mother Wan, already made everyone tremble uncontrollably. They recalled that before the survival contest, Dopey Gua had once suffered from Mother Wan's Fan Bing Bing 1. If we use that Fan Bing Bing as the basis for the evaluation, if the toxicity of the Fan Bing Bing is 3 stars, then the toxicity of the Fan Bing Bing is 3 stars. Then Mother Wan's heavenly steamed divine conch is 5 stars in toxicity. Dopey Gua said with a horrified expression, and that classmate Fong Xing, after eating Mother Wan's heavenly steamed godly snails, he's actually completely unscathed. Chapter 258. Suppressing clan leader Yu and catching the chalk tip that old antique had thrown with his bare hands weren't enough to cause a stir as a transfer student, but after eating Mother Wan's heavenly steamed divine snails, it could be said that Fong Xing had already established himself as the strongest transfer student in the history of number 60 high school. Heavenly steamed divine snails was a new dish that Mother Wan had developed together with Fan Bing Bing 1. As far as Dopey Gua knew, when the heavenly steamed divine snails came out of the pot, just the steam it gave off was enough to instantly char all the fresh ingredients in the canteen. According to Mother Wan, this was one of the special properties of heavenly steamed divine snails, just like the delicacy, snail rice noodles. To put it bluntly, it smelled bad but tasted good. Although eating it would definitely cause diarrhea, it had the effect of detoxifying and beautifying the skin. It was said to be even more effective than drinking body-tempering liquid, as it could dissolve impurities in the body in an instant. Of course, this was all Mother Wan's one-sided statement. After Dopey Gua had eaten Fan Bing Bing 1, no one in school dared to take the risk of trying Mother Wan's new dishes again. But to be honest, Dopey had been hospitalized after eating Mother Wan's Fan Bing 1. After being discharged, however, he felt that his body was actually a lot more resilient than before, and even his meridians were clearly unobstructed. He didn't know if this was the legendary reconstruction after destruction. This was the only thing he silently kept to himself and didn't mention to anyone else. All in all, as a new transfer student, Fong Xing's one day of transfer wasn't any less impressive than Lotus Sun's when she had come to number 60 high school back then. Tianshi Imperial High School's status in Jinghua City for the elite was comparable to the Oscars of elite schools, and those who could enter it were either rich or respectable. However, very few people knew about Tianshi Imperial High School. If it wasn't for Dopey Gua's uncles all over the world, they might not even have heard of this school's name. In a short 10 minutes after class, Dopey Gua spread the gossip about the new transfer students. Before the second class started, Lotus Sun and Feather Lin, who had been sent out to scout out the transfer students, came back hand in hand. It was actually quite normal for girls to hold hands, just like how they liked to go to the toilet after class while holding hands. However, the main problem was that Lotus Sun and Feather Lin had skipped back hand in hand. Everyone in grade 1, class 3 was stunned by the scene. Dopey Gua was dumbfounded. It was normal for Feather Lin, this lively and bouncing fujoshi, to jump up and down, but why was Lotus Sun jumping along with her? What just happened? Classmate Fong Xing is so handsome. Feather Lin cupped her face in her hands, a love-struck look on her face. As she spoke, she elbowed Lotus Sun, repeatedly muttering, right, what do you mean? How strong is he? Super Chen was also a little curious. I think he's pretty awesome. Lotus Sun looked a little shy. Feather Lin thought for a moment and quickly gave out the 4 keywords of a fujoshi: white face, long legs, chopstick spirit, peerless submissive. Everyone, strength. What's the use of strength when you're so handsome? When Feather Lin finished speaking, she suddenly seemed to recall something important and suddenly exclaimed, "Ah!" What happened? Feather Lin felt that her face was a little hot. I forgot to take a selfie with him. Everyone, Feather Lin, classmate Lotus Sun, come with me. Lotus Sun, after saying that, she grabbed Lotus Sun's hand and ran out. Dopey Gua couldn't help folding his arms and sighing at this scene. It's over, it's all over. It wasn't just Dopey Gua, no one could have imagined that even classmate Lotus Sun would fall for a transfer student. Although number 60 high school would recruit 1 or 2 nouveau riche transfer students at this time every year, Fang Xing was the first one to make such a big fuss. Fang Xing's appearance was a little sudden for everyone. He was like a dazzling jewel that had changed hands and shone brightly at number 60 high school. To a certain extent, he also helped Wang Ling attract a lot of attention. But Wang Ling had a hunch that this was a dangerous person. Wang Ling's gaze pierced through the heavy walls to see grade 1 and class 2 on the other side, and he found Fang Xing in the crowd. He looked like a very sunny person. Because his school uniform was still being customized, Fang Xing was wearing a white short-sleeved shirt and a pair of blue striped sweatpants. He bared his white teeth and chatted with the people around him. Wang Ling didn't stare at him for long, he only glanced at him for a moment before immediately looking away. But he didn't know if it was an illusion, but when he looked away, Fang Xing seemed to tilt his head slightly and look behind him out of the corner of his eye. It was Wednesday, and Old Antique happened to have a class. Taking advantage of the live broadcast of the Old Devil's interrogation in the morning, Old Antique gave the class a general overview of modern history, and directly announced that this would be an important test point for the midterm exam. I've just received a notification from the Education Department that the live broadcast of the interrogation in the morning will be included in the textbooks in the second half of this year, at the earliest before New Year's Day. It's possible that it will be a key test item for the next 2 years. Old Antique propped one elbow on the dais as he said unhurriedly, "Students who are taking history in grade 3 in the future should be particularly concerned about this. Starting from this incident, we need to know the specific time and events of the live broadcast of the interrogation of the number 1 criminal, as well as the possible impact on future generations. Starting from the history of the Old Devil and General Yi's famous skills, these are all test points," Old Antique said. "Teacher, can we take the test on this?" someone asked. "Why not?" Old Antique smiled slightly. "If it were me, I would test you on the history of the palm sword's creation, the specific research process, and the historical impact of this spell's development on swordsmanship. Everyone has their own famous skill, and there are countless of them in history. Immortal Zhenyuan's great spell of Zhenyuan, Killer Taoist's enemy blink, and so on. Everyone, of course, from the perspective of test points. I think it's very likely that Devil Emperor Gua Pai's disciple, Immortal Shi Pai, will appear on the test paper." The old devil looked around calmly. "So, does anyone know the origin of Immortal Shi Pai's famous skill, the White Knight spell?" "What's that?" "Many of you may not have heard of it, but this White Knight spell is a spell that can transform the spirit energy of heaven and earth into armor. As long as the spirit energy isn't exhausted, the armor won't be destroyed. Furthermore, it will split into 2 forms according to day and night. One is called Ming Kai, and the other is Dark Kai," Old Antique said. Chapter 259. Old Antique's words sounded like a joke at first, but the look in his eyes was especially serious. In previous years' college entrance exams, Old Antique had always been right on the mark. Therefore, the scores of the class he brought out in the history class had always been first in the district in the past years. The White Knight spell was Immortal Shi Pai's famous unique skill, but most people probably hadn't heard of it. This was because most of the unique skills had been developed by the people involved. Starting from Immortal Shi Pai's famous unique skill, Old Antique remembered something interesting. About a month ago, I gave everyone a lesson on the Gua Pai War. Do you still remember? That lesson was still fresh in everyone's memory. Because in that lesson, Old Antique had once revealed gossip about Immortal Shi Pai's final fate. Before he was executed, he had been found to be pregnant and had left behind a child. When that devil was interrogated this morning, he said that before Immortal Shi Pai was captured, he had already been sealed in the stone ghost mask, so he had no idea what had happened to his disciple. Old Antique sked and shook his head. In my opinion, if Immortal Shi Pai was still alive, I'm afraid he would be a lot trickier to deal with than this old devil. That batch of melon skins, which was said to have been developed by Devil Emperor Gua Pai back then, actually came from Immortal Shi Pai. This person's research on refining pills and making weapons was very advanced. In other words, in that era, Immortal Shi Pai had already mastered the core technology. Speaking up to this point, Old Antique sighed a little regretfully. Unfortunately, he didn't put his knowledge to good use. Everyone, it was Teacher Yi Han's PE class that afternoon, and he was quite popular among the school teachers. There was a good saying, if you weren't good-looking enough, you could make up for it with your height. Because of his naturally curly blonde hair and his tall stature, Teacher Yi was very popular with girls. Every time before the start of PE class, there would always be girls around Teacher Yi asking him about slimming techniques. How should they lose weight where there was too much fat? Was there any specific training? In the face of these questions, Teacher Yi always answered patiently. But today, Teacher Yi looked a little lonely. The physical education class of the elite class was held together. This time, when the students of Class 1 and Class 2 were in class together, the girls' attention was all focused on the new transfer students. Surrounded by a group of girls, Fang Xing walked out of the teaching building. They were talking and laughing so much that they didn't even hear the bell for class. It wasn't until Teacher Yi held his breath and shouted at the top of his lungs that the girls scattered disinterestedly and obediently lined up. This was Fang Xing's first PE class after coming to know 60 high school, and it was also Teacher Ye's first time seeing him. After the girls clustered around Fang Xing dispersed, Teacher Yi began to carefully size up this new transfer student. This leg is really long. Teacher Yi felt that chopstick spirit wasn't enough to describe the length of Fang Xing's legs at all. Based on his judgment, this should be a stilt spirit. The rows were arranged according to height, and Fang Xing, who was 188 meters tall, was at the head of the last row. When he saw Teacher Yi staring at him, he hurriedly moved his head, smiled and greeted, "Hello, Teacher Yi." "I'm Fang Xing." This voice startled Teacher Yi, and he was a little caught off guard. After staring blankly for a long while, Teacher Yi finally reacted. "Oh, classmate Fang, hello." To be honest, Teacher Yi felt a little embarrassed. He had been working at number 60 high school for so many years, and he had seen all kinds of students. Just now, he had actually been dazed for 3 seconds by a transfer student. No wonder this classmate Fang Xing was so popular with the girls. Sighing slightly, Teacher Yi couldn't help lamenting in his heart, it was so good to be young. Thinking back, he had also been young back then. Composing his thoughts, Teacher Yi then stood at the front of the line and clapped his hands. "Come, the old rules, everyone follow me to warm up first. Run behind me at a speed and pace that requires you to keep up with me. When you run, make sure you don't fall into disarray, or you'll have to run again." Wang Ling lined up next to Dopigua, his heart as calm as an ancient well. It was time for the familiar jogging segment, except that it was as troublesome as ever. Jogging was a form of endurance training, but the rules for jogging in cultivation schools were different from those in ordinary high schools. Not only did it train endurance, it also trained concentration. During the jogging process, everyone had to control their swords to float above their heads as they jogged. This was a special exercise method that the sports department experts at the municipal police station had come up with. Jogging in itself didn't give cultivators a very good endurance training effect. A foundation establishment cultivator, even in the early stages, could easily jog for a day and a night without using up all their spirit energy. But given that they had to control their swords to move forward, it was a huge test of their spirit energy. Jogging while controlling the swords would also invisibly increase the consumption of spirit energy, which would build up their resilience. I was worried that it would be too much, so I've always had you use spirit swords specifically for teaching purposes, which will consume less spirit energy. But today, I want to raise the difficulty. Teacher Yi smiled. "Everyone, please take out your personal spirit swords." Compared with teaching spirit swords, your personal spirit swords will consume more spirit energy. Furthermore, jogging while controlling the swords will deepen your affinity with the spirit swords, and you'll be able to activate the sword spirit sooner. Compared with when the semester had just started, Wang Ling didn't feel as awkward taking out Jinka in public anymore. Ever since he had come back from number 59 high school's spirit sword exchange meet, everyone at number 60 high school knew that he used a peachwood sword, and they were already used to it. So when he heard Teacher Ye's request, he very readily summoned Jinka and held it in his hand. Of course, at that moment, the focus of attention was still on Fang Xing. I wonder what sword classmate Fang Xing is using? At that moment, a lot of girls cast curious looks at Fang Xing. Fang Xing rubbed the back of his head a little embarrassedly and looked at Teacher Yi with an embarrassed expression. Teacher Yi, I use a knife. Oh, did you major in knife skills at your previous school? Teacher Yi nodded his head. That's fine. The theory behind knife skills and sword skills is actually pretty much the same. Generally speaking, when you learn to control a sword, you can also control a knife. Classmate Fang Xing is so outstanding, it definitely won't be a problem for you to control a knife. But everyone else is holding a sword, isn't it strange for me to be the only one holding a knife? Fang Xing asked. Teacher Yi laughed heartily. Classmate Fang Xing, don't worry. Since you've come to number 60 high school, we're all family, no one will laugh at you. But teacher, my knife is a little big. Fang Xing still had his own concerns. It's fine, classmate Fang. Teacher Yi patted Fang Xing on the shoulder with a resolute look in his eyes. All right then. Under everyone's gazes, Fang Xing finally took out his big knife from his school uniform pocket. Then, under everyone's horrified gazes, a big green steel knife that was 40 meters long stretched across the center of the sports field. Teacher Yi. Chapter 260. 1. This 40-meter-long green steel broadsword lay directly in the middle of the sports field, and the light reflected off its greenish-gray surface. What kind of picture was this? This broadsword looked like a weapon that had been left behind by an ancient demon god in the human world. Just looking at it gave off a sense of heaviness. Everyone was silent. Teacher Yi also took a deep breath. Student Fang, doesn't your broadsword have a shrinkage function? A lot of large weapons would have a functional, shrinkage talisman, implanted in them during the manufacturing process to ensure that the weapon could be carried around. Logically speaking, this 40-meter-long broadsword should be able to shrink. But regrettably, Fang Xing shook his head. This is a relic my father left for me. It said that during the forging process, the weapon refiner had been traumatized by a breakup and suffered intermittent Alzheimer's disease. At the most critical step in creating this big saber, he wasn't able to put in the contraction talisman. Everyone, for some reason, Wang Ling felt that Fang Xing's experience was shockingly similar to his own. He remembered that it had taken him a lot of effort to cure the old man of intermittent dementia back then. Teacher Yi broke out in a sweat. Then student Fang Xing should use the teaching spirit sword this time. But for the sake of the school's PE class, I suggest that student Fang Xing equip yourself with a normal-sized spirit saber or spirit sword. Very well, Teacher Yi. Fang Xing nodded and gladly accepted. That. Teacher Yi, can you help me put this broadsword away? The corners of Teacher Ye's mouth twitched. Can't you put it away yourself? Fang Xing sighed. It's very hard to put this 40-meter-long broadsword back once it's drawn, so I don't usually use it so easily. Teacher Yi wanted to cry but had no tears. This broadsword weighed no less than 6,000 jin, and Teacher Yi couldn't even keep his balance when he lifted it on his own. The spirit light in the storage space had an automatic acceptance function. As long as a part of an item entered the storage space, it would automatically recognize it and accept it. But when this 40-meter-long broadsword was placed on the sports field, because it was so big, the hilt was more than 2 meters above the ground. In the end, Teacher Yi found another PE teacher in the office, and the two of them picked up the knife together and slowly placed the hilt in Fang Xing's school uniform pocket. This scene was a little bizarre, but Wang Ling somehow felt that this Fang Xing was hiding something. Because when he put the knife back into Fang Xing's pocket, Wang Ling clearly felt Jinka tremble slightly in his hand. Because of this knife, the physical education class was delayed for a full 15 minutes, and the warm-up exercises before the class officially started. Number 60 High's sports field wasn't big. One lap was only 400 meters long. Usually, during the warm-up, Teacher Yi would ask the students to control their swords and jog at a constant speed for 4,000 meters in 4 minutes, which was 10 laps. However, this time, because they had wasted too much time, Teacher Yi also raised the requirements. She limited the boys' time to 2 minutes and the girls' time to 3 minutes. Jogging while controlling the sword was already quite difficult, and now that the time was shortened, the group of boys could only complain endlessly. Wang Ling jogged in the middle of the line. He didn't feel much for this kind of foundation establishment basic training, and just treated himself as a sparring partner. Furthermore, he didn't need to control Jinka at all, since Jinka was conscious. Super Chen led the boys in running at the front of the line. Although he looked very tired, Wang Ling felt that Super Chen could clearly continue. Before entering number 60 high, Super Chen had been a sports talent, and was more outstanding than most of the people here in terms of endurance. In contrast, Dopey Guo was already drenched in sweat by the 4th lap, and vaguely looked like he was going to fall behind. Master of Dopey had a big heart and a fat body. As a foundation establishment cultivator, jogging naturally wasn't a problem, but controlling a sword while jogging was very demanding. It was already very difficult for Dopey Guo to run when he used the teaching spirit sword to warm up. This time, he had to control his personal spirit sword to run, which consumed a lot of spirit energy. Of course, Wang Ling was right behind Dopey Guo. With just a thought, he could make it easier for Dopey Guo to run. But doing so would only harm him. The foundation establishment basic training classes at this stage were still very important. The foundation now was directly linked to the upper limit of future realm growth. Thus, Wang Ling didn't make a move from beginning to end. On the 7th lap, Wang Ling noticed that all the students around him were already drenched in sweat. He immediately manipulated his spirit energy to condense the moisture in the air onto the surface of his skin to make it look like he was sweating. Otherwise, it would really look too strange if everyone around him was sweating while he himself wasn't sweating at all. After 2 minutes of jogging, Dopey Guo directly collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. Super Chen propped himself up on his knees and kicked Dopey Guo's thigh to get him up and walk around. After that, the girls' jogging warm-up was also over. Apart from Lotus Sun, the rest of the girls weren't in much better shape. Bored to death, Wang Ling sat on the side to rest. Most of the people here looked like they were about to die from exhaustion. Apart from himself, there was also Fang Xing. After 10 laps, Fang Xing's face wasn't red and he wasn't out of breath, which shocked Teacher Yi. He felt that this transfer student's physical strength was too good. Even if he was jogging with the teaching spirit sword, he shouldn't have been this relaxed. And most importantly, he had deliberately set a time limit for the boys. Student Fang's physical strength isn't bad. Teacher Yi couldn't help praising him. Fang Xing rubbed his head in embarrassment and appeared very modest. My original school was at the foot of a mountain, and I had to walk 20,000 steps to class every day. Maybe I learned it then. I see. Teacher Yi nodded. He had heard of Fang Xing's school, Tianshi Imperial High School, the strictest private boarding school for aristocrats in Jinghua City. Your results are outstanding. Teacher Yi looked at the blue notebook and stopwatch in his hands. He had recorded the time just now. In the last 3 laps, Fang Xing had clearly sped up, and directly overtook Super Chen, who was at the front of the pack, to finish his warm-up first. Overall, he had finished faster than Super Chen, in just a minute and a half. In 2 weeks, our district sports meet will begin. I want you and classmate Chen to represent the boys in our school in the sword control relay race. Teacher Yi stared at Fang Xing and made his request. Unexpectedly, Fang Xing immediately agreed. No problem, Teacher Yi. If you use a normal spirit sword to jog, do you think you'll consume enough spirit energy? How about you take a break and we'll test it out again? Teacher Yi said. Alright, Teacher Yi. Fang Xing nodded lightly. I'll help you borrow a spirit sword first. Teacher Yi looked around. Is there anyone willing to lend their spirit sword to classmate Fang Xing? No need, Teacher Yi, I'll borrow it myself. Fang Xing smiled and waved his hand. Chapter 261. Wang Ling was blank at this scene. He was sitting in the shade of a tree pretending to rest, which should have been a pretty inconspicuous position. But Wang Ling had overlooked one thing: this position happened to be facing Fang Xing, and was actually quite close to him. In the end, Teacher Yi had just finished speaking when Fang Xing directly walked over to him. "Classmate, can I borrow your sword for a while?" Fang Xing smiled with a very relaxed expression. Wang Ling actually didn't want to lend it to him. For a cultivator, any magic treasure that belonged solely to them was a very private thing. And the most important thing was that Jinka had a very special meaning to him. After Fang Xing asked the question, neither of them moved as they looked at each other more than a meter apart. This was also Wang Ling's first time looking at Fang Xing face to face. One sat in the shade of a tree, the other stood in the sunlight. The two of them formed a sharp contrast. In the sunlight, Fang Xing's hair was a little brown. He was still wearing the same white short-sleeved shirt and blue striped sweatpants. His face was very fair, which made Wang Ling feel that if he wore women's clothes, he would definitely be an expert. After a full minute of silence, Wang Ling finally stretched out his hand and handed Jinka over. Because he really couldn't stand the scorching gazes of the girls around him. Fang Xing was now like the sun. He had just arrived at number 60 high school, but he was already shining in all directions and was really too eye-catching. Wang Ling had actually expected that if he refused Fang Xing's request, he would probably be hated by others even more than if he hadn't lent it to him. Thus, although Wang Ling had lent Fang Xing his sword, he didn't really like this person. He hadn't read that Fang Xing was deliberately trying to borrow his spirit sword. Everything had seemed very natural. But Wang Ling had a feeling in his heart that Fang Xing was doing it on purpose. Of course, Wang Ling also had his own reasons for handing Jinka over. Jinka had its own consciousness. If Fang Xing really was up to no good, given Jinka's strength, it would definitely be able to detect it. Thus, the rest of the PE class became Fang Xing's one-man show. In previous years, number 60 high school had always done poorly in the district school sports meet, and as the head of the sports team's teaching and research team, Teacher Yi had always had a headache. This year, number 60 high school's elite class finally had a few sports talent students like Super Chen. Coupled with the sudden discovery of a good seedling like Fang Xing today, Teacher Yi felt that this was an opportunity that absolutely couldn't be missed. Holding Jinka, Fang Xing stood at the starting line and waited for Teacher Yi to start. Using the teaching spirit sword, Fang Xing had run 10 laps in a good time of 1.5 minutes. If he used a normal spirit sword, the final result wouldn't be more than 30 seconds, which was 2 minutes. Teacher Yi felt that number 60 high's running event in the sports meet this year was basically a done deal. As Teacher Yi waved his hand, Fang Xing started to run along the track. A cultivator's jogging speed was much faster than an ordinary person's sprint. As soon as Fang Xing took off, she left a trail of afterimages behind her, and the girls around her instantly turned into cheerleaders. The girls cheered while the boys gossiped on the side. As a transfer student, Fang Xing was a little jumpy, which made some of the boys unhappy. But he could only suppress this unhappiness in his heart. At this critical juncture, anyone who went against Fang Xing definitely wouldn't end up well. Not only would he have to suffer the disdainful looks from the girls, even if he were to look for trouble in private, it was very likely that he wouldn't be able to win. How did the saying go again? "I like the look on your face when you can't stand me, but can't get rid of me." Wang Ling felt that this saying was very appropriate for Fang Xing right now. Fang Xing ran the first 6 laps with surprising ease, and Jinka hovered steadily above his head. When he had handed Jinka over to Fang Xing, Wang Ling had already told Jinka to be as relaxed as possible, and he had also thought of a way to increase Fang Xing's consumption of spirit energy. What Wang Ling hadn't expected was that Fang Xing would actually be able to endure it. On the 7th lap, sweat finally dripped down Fang Xing's cheeks, and he clearly slowed down a little. Of course, in the eyes of an ordinary person, this speed was actually still a series of afterimages. Thus, Teacher Ye's eyes followed Fang Xing closely, and he was highly focused. After teaching physical education for so many years, Teacher Yi was actually very sensitive to this kind of slight difference in speed. Sitting in the shade of a tree and watching the show, Wang Ling saw Super Chen on the side, hands on his waist, dumbstruck. "Classmate Fang Xing is too abnormal." Wang Ling felt that this, abnormal, was probably a great compliment for Fang Xing. Super Chen was a first-class athlete at the foundation establishment stage in Huaxiu Nation, and most of the time he looked at Fang Xing, he was judging him. For Super Chen to say such a thing was already enough to prove that Fang Xing wasn't ordinary. But Wang Ling always felt that Fang Xing wasn't as simple as he looked. Wang Ling looked at the track. In the blink of an eye, Fang Xing had already run the 9th lap. Accompanied by the cheers of the girls around him, Fang Xing's slow pace abruptly changed to 1 minute and 31 seconds. On the 10th lap, he passed in front of Teacher Yi like a gust of wind, and the stopwatch finally stopped at 1 minute and 31 seconds. Too awesome. Teacher Yi looked at the stopwatch and was so excited that he almost jumped up. When Fang Xing had been using a spirit sword normally, there had only been a difference of 1 second. Furthermore, the most important thing was that the spirit sword Fang Xing was using was Wang Ling's, not his own, and they hadn't signed a contract. In a situation where their chemistry wasn't that high, Fang Xing had actually run even better than the sports students. Teacher Yi instantly felt that he had picked up a treasure. After the run, Fang Xing's face was a little red. Panting, he came up to Wang Ling to thank him and return Jinka. When he took Jinka back, Wang Ling already knew for sure that Fang Xing's realm was far from being as simple as the foundation establishment stage. What on earth was this person hiding? This feeling of not being able to figure out Fang Xing's background made Wang Ling a little uncomfortable. Fang Xing pulled up his white short-sleeved shirt to wipe his sweat and smiled brightly. "Classmate, thank you. Oh, by the way, I haven't asked your name yet." Wang Ling hid the profoundness in his eyes under his bangs. This was the second time the two of them had looked at each other. Before Fang Xing could say anything, Super Chen on the side had already interjected. "His name is Wang Ling, and he doesn't like to talk much." Super Chen had always been the type to get to know people easily, and he always had an inexplicable fondness for top athletes in sports. Thus, his impression of Fang Xing wasn't bad. "Oh, so it's classmate Wang Ling," Fang Xing nodded. Suddenly, he turned to look at Teacher Yi on the side. "Teacher Yi, have you found everyone for the sports meet?" Teacher Yi rubbed his chin and said thoughtfully, "We haven't decided on the specific lineup yet, but our school wants to be a key city high school this year, so we still have to pay attention to the district competition this time. Headmaster Chen wants me to bring out the strongest lineup. As for our 2 elite classes, you and classmate Chen are already confirmed." "I see," Fang Xing smiled and bared his teeth at Teacher Yi. "Actually, I think classmate Wang Ling is also pretty strong. Why don't you let him come along?" Wang Ling could see it now. Chapter 262. This was the first time Wang Ling had felt like he had been schemed against. There were times when metaphysics could happen, but Wang Ling believed that under certain circumstances, coincidences could happen. But when coincidences happened once, twice, or even more than once, Wang Ling couldn't help but start to suspect the event itself. Thus, Wang Ling had a very special impression of Fang Xing. That kind of casual or intentional contact with him out of the corner of his eye, which seemed like a coincidence but also didn't seem like a coincidence, had made Wang Ling extremely wary of Fang Xing. But while he was on guard, Wang Ling never thought that he would be the first to fall into Fang Xing's trap. With Fang Xing's recommendation, Teacher Yi was naturally very happy. Furthermore, it couldn't be said that Teacher Yi didn't have any impression of Wang Ling. At the previous Spirit Sword Exchange meet at number 59 High School, Teacher Yi had felt that Wang Ling's luck had been exceptionally good. Perhaps this time, he could also go out as a mascot? "Classmate Wang Ling, can you participate?" And so, after Fang Xing's recommendation, Teacher Yi looked at Wang Ling with a hopeful and earnest expression. Wang Ling had heard Super Chen mention the district sports meet before. But for him to represent the school in a sports meet of this level, Wang Ling felt that he was usually pretty low-key in school, and even his sports scores were average. Furthermore, there were a lot of sports talent students like Super Chen among this year's senior grade 1 freshmen, and Wang Ling felt that he definitely wouldn't get a chance with the limited number of spots. Now that he thought about it carefully, Wang Ling felt like he had sold himself out. What a strange flag he had set up. In the end, Wang Ling agreed. Of course, he had been forced to agree. After school that day, Fang Xing walked out of the school gate surrounded by a group of girls as usual. Wang Ling was also the one who chose to leave school at this time. Furthermore, there was a long distance between Wang Ling and Fang Xing. At this stage, Wang Ling felt that it was better to stay away from such a dazzling person. Wang Ling could have chosen to teleport home, but the old man happened to be in the city today to visit some of the disciples he had taken in at a star-rated hotel, so he had come to pick Wang Ling up on Sheep's little tricycle. The most amazing thing was that even Loopy Toad had come along. Looking across the street at number 60 High School's gate, Wang Ling saw the old man waiting on the other side of the road on his freshly maintained sheep, with a green-furred Akita lying lazily on the ground and wagging its tail. This scene was a little strange. The old man's parking spot was quite conspicuous, and a lot of people could actually see it. Thus, as soon as school was over, Wang Ling grabbed his bag and left class. He wanted to leave quickly and avoid Fang Xing. Ling, what's going on? Why do you look so flustered? The old man was a little puzzled. Loopy Toad raised its eyes to look at Wang Ling and winked strangely. It also felt that its little master Ling wasn't himself today. But very quickly, it saw Fang Xing say goodbye to a group of girls on the other side of the road, and it instantly understood what had happened. This was probably Loopy Toad's first time seeing Fang Xing, but it felt very strange. It felt that Fang Xing's aura was indescribably familiar. It felt like it had smelled it somewhere before. Ling, is this your classmate? The old man stared at Fang Xing for a while as he walked over. Then, he gave his first impression of Fang Xing. Your classmate has such long legs. Wang Ling, although the old man was old and had once suffered from dementia, his sense of beauty hadn't waned at all. Ever since he had learned to watch videos on demand from Father Wang, he had studied a lot about modern young people's otaku culture, and could be considered a rather fashionable old man. Hello, Grandpa, are you here to pick up classmate Wang Ling? Fang Xing came closer and greeted him warmly. Then, Wang Ling saw the old man nod and raise his hand to say, "You're okay." Wang Ling, Fang Xing laughed heartily. Grandpa, you're so funny. You're not in the same class as our Ling, right? Why don't I see you in the class photo at the start of the semester? The old man asked. My name is Fang Xing, I'm new here. I just registered here the day before yesterday, Fang Xing replied. So he was a transfer student. The old man was instantly enlightened. For a parent like this to suddenly transfer in the middle of a class, the connections and financial resources behind him probably weren't simple. Furthermore, the old man had already pictured Fang Xing's parents in his mind. He thought of a line from a skit, big heads and thick necks, either rich or a cook. So, if this classmate Fang Xing's parents weren't rich, then they were probably chefs. The old man instantly felt that he had found a common language. Wang Ling already didn't know what to say to ridicule the old man's strange train of thought. Classmate Fang, although you're not in the same class as Ling, you're still schoolmates. In the future, we'll be indebted to you for taking care of our Ling. The old man smiled at Fang Xing. Don't worry, Grandpa, in 2 weeks, classmate Wang Ling and I will represent the school in the Mere School Sports Meet. I'll take good care of classmate Wang Ling. When Fang Xing said this, he still had a harmless smile on his face, and his eyes were narrowed into slits, which looked a little meaningful. But that was the strange part. When Wang Ling had read Fang Xing's mind, he hadn't detected even the slightest bit of evil. This was truly the strangest person he had ever seen. After chatting with the old man for a while, Fang Xing suddenly noticed the ingredients in the tricycle. When the old man had left the hotel, his former disciples had forcefully given him these fresh fruits and vegetables, and they filled up half the tricycle. There were all sorts of vegetables and fruits, as well as a huge cured ham. The ham was vacuum-packed and had the words, "Secret Recipe of Kikaro Restaurant," written on it. Grandpa, are you a chef? Fang Xing asked curiously. But I retired long ago. When I get old, I can barely lift a spoon. The old man smiled. What a coincidence. Fang Xing was pleasantly surprised when he received the old man's reply. To tell you the truth, my family actually runs a noodle shop. Oh. Noodle shop. What kind of noodles do you sell? The old man's interest was suddenly piqued. Fang Xing, we sell all kinds of noodles. But our shop's most famous noodle is still the handmade beef tendon noodles made by a master in Lanzhou. We also weave the beef tendon noodles into the shape of instant noodles, and fry them at high temperatures. Finally, we make crispy noodle snacks. The old man, Loopy Toad. Chapter 263. Wang Ling didn't know if Fang Xing's appearance could be considered a coincidence, but he had to admit that no one had ever been able to make such a big impact on his life. After school on Wednesday, the old man and Fang Xing had only exchanged a few words before they had already completely hooked up with each other. For a time, Wang Ling deeply wondered who the old man's real grandson was. It was said that good food could bring people closer, but Wang Ling had always felt that this was actually a questionable theory. After all, not all milk was called trensu, and not all aphrodisiacs could make a person's clothes explode. In particular, Wang Ling maintained an extremely high level of composure in front of Fang Xing. Wang Ling was surprised to find that this was the first time he had calmed down in the face of the sugar-coated bullet of crispy noodle snacks. It was a weekend on June 25th, and the old man went out early in the morning. After their meeting on Wednesday, Fang Xing and the old man exchanged contact information, and Fang Xing enthusiastically invited the old man to visit his family's noodle shop this weekend. While exchanging pointers on cooking, they could also discuss some academic issues from a gourmet perspective. According to the old man, although Fang Xing's parents owned this noodle shop, Fang Xing would usually help the noodle master pull noodles on the weekends when he was free. When he left, the old man specially went to Wang Ling's room to ask him to go with him. Because he didn't want to have too much contact with Fang Xing, Wang Ling chose to play dead in his room. In the end, the old man knocked on the door for a long time, but there was no response, so he could only go alone. Wang Ling watched as the old man left on sheep. When he left, he had Loopy Toad follow him to protect the old man. Of course, Wang Ling had another reason for having Loopy Toad go, and that was to check out Fang Xing. People with evil intentions would most likely have evil karma on them, and as a demon king, Loopy Toad was very sensitive to this kind of smell. After watching the old man disappear from sight on sheep, Wang Ling finally breathed a slight sigh of relief. When he opened the door, Wang Ling bumped into Lai Mengmeng. It was clear that Lai Mengmeng and Father Wang were almost done with the script. Father Wang was now doing the final edits on the first 300,000 words of his new book, The Live Streaming Life of the Immortal King. In a week's time, it would be directly published online. In a week, he would directly publish it online, and then hold a godly press conference. Lai Mengmeng had been at the Wang family's small villa for the last few days, and most of the time he was in Father Wang's study, patiently giving his opinion on the draft. Wang Ling hadn't seen him anywhere else. Even at mealtime, it was Mother Wang who had prepared portions for two. To be honest, Lai Mengmeng's presence was very low. In some sense, he was like the sixth man of illusion. Lai Mengmeng had deep dark circles under his eyes, his hair looked messy, and his bangs stood up like a hedgehog's. Because he had stayed up too late last night, he had directly fallen asleep on the sofa in the study. As soon as she woke up, she saw Wang Ling as soon as she opened the door. He had just woken up when he saw Wang Ling. Lai Mengmeng yawned. He was over 180 centimeters tall and had a skinny body. Wang Ling had once wondered if this person would pass out after several days in a row with Father Wang in the study. Xiao Song, you're awake? Hearing Lai Mengmeng's voice, Mother Wang hurriedly greeted him from downstairs. You've worked hard, come down and eat first. Are you hungry? Not at all, not at all. This is what I should do. Sister, I've really troubled you. Lai Mengmeng awkwardly greeted Mother Wang as he went downstairs. When he saw Mother Wang downstairs, he even bowed repeatedly, as shy as he had been when he first arrived. How's the situation? Mother Wang came out with a plate of dumplings and placed it in front of Lai Mengmeng. Speaking of novels, Lai Mengmeng, who had just woken up, was in high spirits again. This time, Brother Situ's novel is really great. If it was fired, it would definitely be able to catch fire. I think it won't be a problem for this book to surpass Let Go of That Wet Nurse. Before he could care about the dumplings in front of him, he hurriedly continued, although the theme of live streaming is a cliché, it is still the main force of the current series of entertaining and relaxing novels. Previously, Brother Situ had accumulated a lot of experience with Let Go of That Wet Nurse, so he was able to handle the new book more easily than before. There were a lot of jokes and memes in the book. There were also live streaming elements and plagiarism elements. Furthermore, the plot was really great. It's about an invincible high school student's daily life. Wang Ling. In order to keep a low profile, the protagonist chose a relatively ordinary high school, and in the end, by a freak combination of factors, he entered the elite class of an ordinary high school. In the Dao Talismans class on the first week of school, he accidentally summoned a demon king, who was then taken in as a pet by the protagonist. Now that I think about it, it's still very interesting. Lai Mengmeng smiled very happily. Also, after discussing it with Brother Situ, I feel that we can definitely make an Invincible series based on this theme. In the future, when we write books, each one will have an invincible protagonist. We'll clearly write each person's story, and finally write an epilogue where all the protagonists will fight for the Holy Grail together. Wang Ling, Mother Wang couldn't help laughing dryly at this familiar plot. Ha ha ha, as long as you're happy. Wang Ling already didn't have the energy to ridicule her. This was the first time he had seen someone sell out their son so thoroughly. Mother Wang had put in 40 dumplings, but Lai Mengmeng's stomach was surprisingly small. He had only eaten 10 dumplings when he rubbed his stomach and found that he couldn't eat anymore. He looked at Mother Wang and said, "Sister, should we call Brother Situ down for dinner? When we came down earlier, it seemed like he was still sleeping." Mother Wang sighed. "Just let him sleep. He's been exhausted these past 2 days. I just made some chicken soup, and when he wakes up, it'll be almost done. Both of you should drink some." "Oh, okay, thank you, sister." Lai Mengmeng smiled, showing his big white teeth. "You've been busy for a few nights, do you want to go wash up first?" Mother Wang asked as she looked at Lai Mengmeng's messy hair. "Ah, that's so embarrassing, it's fine, it's fine. You've been here so many times already, why are you still acting like a big girl?" Hands on her hips, Mother Wang smiled a little helplessly. "The new dental tools and cups are under the cupboard in the washroom on the second floor, go look for them later. You and your brother should be about the same size, I'll find some clothes for you later." Lai Mengmeng blushed. "Then, thank you so much, sister. Don't mention it." Mother Wang waved her hand. "It's getting cold now, I'll give you a set of long johns, remember to wear them." Lai Mengmeng. Chapter 264. It was only around 8 o'clock now, which was still quite early. Wang Ling ate some dumplings. While eating breakfast, he glanced at the chat group in passing and found that it was quite lively in the morning. Dharmaraja had started the conversation and was talking about Devil Valley. Wang Ling had heard before that this was a legendary secret land, but it had only appeared pitifully few times in history. Furthermore, most of them originated from rumors in the cultivation circle. The most frequent place to appear was in one's circle of friends. No one had ever seen the existence of Devil Valley with their own eyes. According to effective statistics, it had appeared less often than the gate between worlds. Thus, Wang Ling was still very interested in this secret land. On the other hand, he had to find grenade-throwing senior immortal for another matter. A few days ago, during the joint military training exercise for the 6 schools, the troll arm that had been cut off by the gate between worlds was still in his field of vision. This was a severed limb of a demon king, and wouldn't rot even if it was in his field of vision. But to be honest, it wasn't of much use to Wang Ling naturally. This demon king's arm was a great tonic for cultivators, but neither Father Wang nor Mother Wang had the fortune to enjoy it. Even if it was just a severed limb, the demon energy inside was too strong. If an ordinary person ate one bite, they definitely wouldn't be able to withstand the impact of the demon energy, and would explode and die. Thus, Wang Ling felt that it was better to give it to grenade throwing as soon as possible for him to recycle it. The troll demon king's arm was a treasure from its tendons to its bones. The bones could be used as material for fatty luo to refine weapons, and the remaining tendons could be ground into powder for immortal Toya to use as medicine. While Lai Mengmeng went upstairs to take a shower, Mother Wang cleaned up the dining table. Just as Lai Mengmeng was about to go upstairs, he heard Mother Wang's voice from the kitchen. "Ling Ling, it seems there was a delivery at the door earlier. Take a look and see if it's yours." Someone had sent him something? Wang Ling hesitated for a moment. He hadn't expected anyone to send him a package. And now, even the delivery person was so elusive, leaving after dropping off the package without even confirming who had received it. Just thinking about it like a thief was exciting. Sure enough, when he reached the door, he found a parcel on the ground. It was wrapped tightly and could be described as airtight. A flat cardboard box was wrapped in a thick layer of elastic plastic paper, and a layer of black steel film was added at the center. In other words, if one wasn't a cultivator, an ordinary person wouldn't be able to open this package. Based on the quality and toughness of the black steel membrane, if one wanted to tear open the package without the help of any magic weapon, they would need to at least be at the gold core stage. But, who on earth sent this to him? The sender on the package was a series of asterisks, obviously anonymous. Wang Ling felt that this was very strange and a little fishy. Because he did not sense anyone passing by the villa, it was obvious that the courier who delivered the package was an expert and had done a good job of concealment. That was why he neglected his observation and became a fish that slipped through the net. Wang Ling put the parcel away. First, he listened to the sound, then shook it violently. The inside of the package was also handled very tightly, without the slightest trace of movement. Then, Wang Ling opened his heavenly eye and directly penetrated it to confirm that this package didn't contain anything dangerous like a bomb. It was actually a very small USB flash drive. After thinking for a bit, Wang Ling used his fingernails to cut open the package as easily as if he were cutting tofu. "Sister, your water heater is so comfortable. It can actually sense the temperature. When I feel a little cold, it immediately warms up." At that moment, Lai Mengmeng came downstairs while praising the smart water heater which Wang Ming had researched and modified. He was wearing Father Wang's long-sleeved shirt and jeans, and Wang Ling could vaguely see the bright red long johns inside through the collar. "Don't stand on ceremony, just treat it as your own home," Mother Wang replied. The water heater that Lai Mengmeng was talking about was probably one of the few things in the Wang family that Wang Ling hadn't enchanted. There were 3 bathrooms in the Wang family's small villa, and apart from the toilet in Wang Ling's room, he hadn't touched the others. The water heater was installed on top of the bath tyrant. If this guy had been enchanted, it would be a gremlin, and it would actually be weird to have a gremlin stare at you every day when you took a bath. After the bath, Lai Mengmeng was clearly a lot more energetic than before. His eyes were very sharp, and he saw the USB flash drive in Wang Ling's hand at first glance. Recognizing the logo on the USB flash drive, he had an excited expression on his face. "Isn't this the new game Outlast?" Wang Ling hadn't expected this USB flash drive to be just a game. He had thought that it would contain some kind of educational video on human reproduction. "I've seen the trailer for this game. After you enter the game world, you have to complete the missions assigned by the game's main god one by one, survive the checkpoints, and reach the final checkpoint, and you win." Lai Mengmeng stared enviously at the USB flash drive in Wang Ling's hand. But this game hasn't been officially released on the market yet, and the ones circulating now are all early versions. "How on earth did you get your hands on it?" Wang Ling looked at the USB flash drive with a stupefied expression. He seriously suspected that someone had mailed it to the wrong person. "This game can be played by multiple people. Do you want to play it?" Lai Mengmeng stared at the USB flash drive and swallowed. Wang Ling felt that if he didn't stop this geek, the USB flash drive would definitely be eaten up. Looking at Lai Mengmeng's expression, Wang Ling suddenly recalled what Father Wang had once said: novels were in fact all damn fat geeks. But now Wang Ling could see the difference between Lai Mengmeng and other novels. It turned out that there weren't just damn fat geeks, there were also damn skinny geeks. Unable to resist Lai Mengmeng's burning gaze, Wang Ling could only take him back to the bedroom, turn on the computer, and plug in the USB flash drive. In less than a minute, this game called Outlast had already been automatically installed on the computer. As the progress bar filled up, the game window directly popped up. Wang Ling rarely played games, but he was still stunned by how exquisite this game was. This was because the USB flash drive used in this game had been independently designed. When the game was loaded, the entire game interface could be directly projected on the computer screen and then enveloped the whole room, creating a holographic effect. This game is amazing. Lai Mengmeng was very excited. The game's rendering is very good. This USB flash drive is black technology. Wang Ling didn't say anything as he watched the scenery around him change. Then, a line of bloody words suddenly appeared in the air in front of him. Do you want to understand the meaning of life? Do you want to truly live? Chapter 265. This line of bloody words was hidden in the air, and Wang Ling could even smell the real scent of blood from it. If this was just a line of special effects in a game, it was too realistic. Wang Ling frowned and had a vague feeling that something was wrong. On the contrary, Lai Mengmeng looked very excited. This was because the realism of the game had already far exceeded his expectations. It actually wasn't difficult nowadays to use high-tech holographic technology like a USB drive and a computer screen to directly project a scene. But for it to be this realistic, Lai Mengmeng guessed that a high-level illusion spell had to have been incorporated into it. Under normal circumstances, ordinary people wouldn't be able to play this kind of game that combined cultivation spells to enhance the realism of the game. But Escape was different. In the latest game trailer last month, this was currently the only unrestricted massively multiplayer online survival game in the world. Below the bloody words, there were only two options, yes and no. Lai Mengmeng pointed in the direction of yes, and very quickly, the initial loading screen of the game began. A string of words appeared in the air one after another. Do you think studying is the only way to make you happy? Do you think studying every day is the only way to feel good all over? Do you think you'll feel uncomfortable if you don't study for a day? Wrong all over. Actually, playing games is fine too. Moderate gaming is good for the brain, but gaming addiction is bad for the body. Wang Ling stared at this slightly jumpy introduction to preventing addiction, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help twitching. Then, he saw the final loading screen, which had a logo of two axes stacked on top of each other. Below the logo were the words, Xianfu Technology. It was only at this point that Lai Mengmeng found it a little strange. As far as he could remember, Outlast didn't seem to be the same company, but very quickly, Lai Mengmeng was so engrossed by the game that he actually completely forgot about this. According to the plot, Wang Ling and Lai Mengmeng appeared in an ambulance on the way to a mental hospital. You are the second batch of test takers to be sent into this world, and also the most outstanding batch. A voice rang out from beside him. Wang Ling turned his head and saw an old man in a white coat staring at him. He looked to be in his 50s or 60s and had a skinny body. He wore a pair of reading glasses and his waist was full of syringes, which made him look very strange. Lai Mengmeng didn't even need to think to know that this must be some kind of Frankenstein character setting. This was the first time he had come into contact with an NPC in a holographic environment, and he couldn't help but reach out to touch it. Everything was too real, too cool. Before I say mission. The corner of the old man's mouth twitched. He couldn't help but look at Lai Mengmeng. Please be a little more serious. Can you first remove the hand that's pinching my face? Ah, sorry. Lai Mengmeng quickly retracted his hand. The old man was silent for a moment and looked at the two of them. You two should have realized it by now. You two have fallen into an extremely powerful illusion. Next, I will send you all to the mental hospital. Before you complete the Lord God's mission, this illusion effect will continue. What you need to do is to cooperate with the other teams that come to the hospital according to the requirements of the mission and escape from the hospital. A continuous illusion spell? Lai Meng Meng was a little surprised. Although Escape was indeed the only unrestricted survival game in the world that incorporated magic to make it more realistic, he hadn't expected the game to actually have a mechanism where you couldn't quit until you completed the mission. In other words, if we don't complete the mission, we can't quit the game, right? Lai Meng Meng asked the old man. That's right. The old man smiled evilly. His eyes were very mysterious. Then, what if your mom calls you for dinner? Lai Meng Meng couldn't help complaining. Wang Ling, the old man, what if someone hasn't finished their homework? The old man, if someone is stuck and can't get out, can you still force them to stay? This mechanism is too unscientific. The old man broke out in a sweat, and at the same time, his expression suddenly turned extremely ferocious. A game is a game. No one can leave before you finish the game. And let me tell you, in this illusion spell, you will feel pain, you will get hurt, you will even die. Die? Hearing this, Lai Meng Meng was finally stunned. The old man chuckled. How is it, scared? Lai Meng Meng's next words almost made the old man spit blood. What the hell? Your game has a resurrection token mechanism? The old man felt like he was going crazy. Suddenly, he pulled out a syringe and stabbed it hard into the back of Lai Meng Meng's hand. The cold tip of the needle pierced his body, and Lai Meng Meng felt a real, piercing pain, and he couldn't help screaming, ow 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 ow. He realized that his hand was actually bleeding. Seeing Lai Meng Meng bleeding and clearly feeling the pain, Wang Ling finally realized that there was something fishy about this game. This illusion spell was very abnormal. Normal illusions would automatically be broken when the target felt pain, but this illusion was obviously more advanced. It was an illusion that could enter deep into one's consciousness. He was now 100% sure that this escape definitely wasn't the escape that Lai Meng Meng had seen, but a death game in the guise of a game. Borrowing the USB flash drive from earlier, everyone who had accepted this game had entered the illusion world. Was this a prank? Wang Ling's gaze abruptly turned serious. In that brief moment just now, he had already thought of a way to break this illusion spell and leave easily. But the other people trapped in the game couldn't intervene. He had to think of a way to help Lai Meng Meng break the illusion, but unfortunately, Lai Meng Meng was still completely unaware of the seriousness of the problem. This damn homebody touched the spot where the old man had just stabbed him and asked, "What did you inject me with?" "Heh heh heh, does it hurt?" The old man sneered. "I injected you with a neurovirus just now. It will flare up when you're 24. If you can survive to the last stage, you'll get a hint about the antidote." Wang Ling narrowed his eyes. Sure enough, everything was as he had thought. This poison was real. He could clearly see the traces of the neurotoxin entering Lai Meng Meng's body through the blood vessels on the back of his hand. Heh heh heh, now. The old man finally turned to Wang Ling, and at the same time fiercely stabbed the syringe into Wang Ling's hand. "It's your turn." But very quickly, the old man realized a very serious problem. He realized that his needle couldn't go in at all. Chapter 266. For a moment, the situation was awkward. When the old man took the syringe back, he saw that the needle had been stabbed crookedly, and his face instantly turned black, like pickled mustard in soy sauce. When all was said and done, he was just an NPC, and couldn't think about something that was beyond his understanding. Because according to the game's plot, he would inject neurotoxin into everyone who entered the game world in the car, and then place them in a mental hospital. Surrounded by zombies, they would find a way to escape from the mental hospital, and finally find the antidote. Thus, the old man could only continue to stab Wang Ling's hand with the syringe like wet nurse Rong had done. In the end, the old man ran out of syringes. The old man looked at Wang Ling's slender and long fingers, then at the smooth and clean back of his hand, and finally chose to give up thinking. Wang Ling, Lai Mengmeng. About 5 minutes later, the ambulance slowly drove through the iron gates of the mental hospital. The hospital looked very shabby, and because the game was set at night, coupled with the shadows of the trees and the strange cries, the entire atmosphere of the game looked even more terrifying. After the ambulance drove through the large iron gates of the mental hospital, Wang Ling and Lai Mengmeng found old newspapers scattered by the fountain in the center of the hospital. According to the usual pattern in games, these old newspapers usually recorded some information about the plot. It turned out that the old man had probably explained this information after the injection. But because the needle hadn't gone in, the old man in the ambulance had crashed, just like that. Lai Mengmeng was utterly shocked. He had never thought that there would actually be such a strange bug. Picking up the newspaper, Lai Mengmeng analyzed some useful information. This plot should be the same as the main storyline in the trailer. This mental hospital has been infected by a biochemical virus, and all the patients have turned into monsters. What we need to do is to do our best to avoid the monsters in the mental hospital, search for clues about the antidote, and finally escape from the mental hospital. Lai Mengmeng pointed to the main entrance of the hospital. After we enter from here, we should be able to find a night vision camera and several batteries in one of the wards. According to God King's mission instructions, you'll get points for completing the mission, which you can use to recharge the batteries. Hearing this, Wang Ling nodded. The plot of the game was quite conventional, but the main point was that it wasn't a simple game. There were injuries and deaths in the game. Therefore, if they wanted to break the illusion of others, the key was to find the Lord God who ruled the game. Wang Ling quietly opened his heavenly eye and saw all kinds of laws interweaving in the game world. Clearly, this was a game set up by a powerful being. Above the deity transformation stage were the tribulation stage, the void refinement stage, and so on. However, there were 3 major stages, which were collectively known as the enlightened being, the itinerant immortal, and the true immortal. And this world had been set up by itinerant immortals. Although they weren't on the same level as General E and the others, they still couldn't be underestimated. Wang Ling's understanding of the prime gods was a law of nothingness, and it was very difficult to capture the prime gods' true forms when they were in mimicry mode. Wang Ling sighed silently. The only thing he could do now was to wait for the Lord God to show himself and then look for an opportunity. While he was thinking, another ambulance drove in from the iron gate. It was the other team that the strange old man in the ambulance had mentioned. Oh yeah, what is this place? Wang Ling saw a fat man clamoring as he got out of the first ambulance, and behind him was a young man in a white shirt. Wang Ling's eyebrows instantly twitched when he saw the two of them. He hadn't expected this team to actually be Fatty Luo and grenade-throwing senior immortal. Why are Brother Ling and Brother Song here too? The moment the young man in white saw Wang Ling and Lai Mengmeng, he was instantly pleasantly surprised. Because he had visited the Wang family many times before, grenade-throwing senior immortal was quite familiar with Lai Mengmeng. This was great senior Wang's, and his real name was Song Zikai. It was impossible for him to forget. It was clear that grenade-throwing senior immortal was already considered a semi-acquaintance of Lai Mengmeng. Although they didn't usually talk much, they often ran into each other at the Wang family's small villa. How did you get in? Lai Mengmeng asked curiously. I was in Fatty Luo's shop this morning, and he suddenly received this express delivery. We wanted to open it to take a look, but then somehow came in. Grenade-throwing senior immortal smiled and scratched his head. In the ambulance just now, there was an old man who wanted to stab us with a needle. Then, I acted in a little self-defense. Wang Ling glanced over. Then, he noticed grenade-throwing senior immortal's ambulance. He saw that the old man in the back of the ambulance had also crashed, and his body was full of syringes. Wang Ling, based on the normal development of the plot, it should have been as Lai Mengmeng had said. After the NPC old man in the ambulance had injected the neurotoxin and taken the patient to the mental hospital, the subsequent developments would have unfolded. According to the game's plot, after the old man had been injected with the neurotoxin, the game would have directly manipulated the ambulance to directly smash open the main gate of the mental hospital. Unfortunately, before the plot could unfold normally, the two old NPC men had already died one after the other. In front of the hospital, Fatty Luo looked around, his expression a little gloomy. Whether it was Fatty Luo or grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, the moment they entered this game, they already knew that this wasn't a normal game. This game was based on the original Outlast, but had been remodeled, and even the developer was different. "I'm very sorry to have dragged you into this. This was probably directed at me." Fatty Luo's expression was a little gloomy. "Why are you so sure, Brother Luo?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal found it a little strange. 2 days ago, I received a threatening letter, but I didn't take it seriously at the time. Fatty Luo laughed. "But I never thought that the other party would actually use this kind of method to force me to come here. I heard that my peers in the weaponsmithing circle also received the same letter. So I'm guessing that apart from the four of us, there should be other people. What's their purpose?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. "Their purpose is still unclear, but what's certain is that they're looking for a smith. Anyone who has anything to do with refining weapons has been dragged into this. You came to my shop before, so you must have been affected as well." Fatty Luo narrowed his eyes. "This illusion spell is very powerful. We probably won't be able to get out with our strength alone. For now, we can only follow the plot of this game and see what happens." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at Lai Mengmeng with a serious expression. "Brother Song, don't worry. We'll protect you." However, Lai Mengmeng didn't seem to be aware of the danger. This damn homebody stood in front of the door, his eyes fixed on the tightly shut door of the mental hospital as he asked, "Then how do we get in now?" According to the plot, it should be that old man who drove the ambulance directly through the door. Is this the only way to trigger the plot? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal rubbed his chin. "In theory, yes." Lai Mengmeng nodded without hesitation. Hearing this, a relieved expression appeared on Wang Ling's face. Actually, this made things easier. After Lai Mengmeng said this, he saw Wang Ling walk toward the ambulance behind him. He saw Wang Ling pick up one of the ambulances and throw it straight at the hospital's main entrance with one arm like a rubber ball. Boom. The main entrance of the hospital was smashed open. Chapter 267. This voice sounded extremely like an illusion. There was a faint sense of reality in the nothingness, as though someone was breathing right next to his ear. Lai Mengmeng couldn't help but tremble. Why did he hear the words Motherth *Ker? Who on earth was talking? But Lai Mengmeng already had no way to investigate the truth of the matter, because the main gate of the mental hospital had already been smashed open by the ambulance. Although he knew that Wang Ling was studying at a Foundation Establishment high school, when he saw Wang Ling lift an ambulance with his own eyes, he still couldn't help feeling the impact of the image. Wow! Are all Foundation Establishment high school students this strong? It was clear that Lai Mengmeng knew nothing about Wang Ling. Only Fatty Luo and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's lips twitched at the same time when they heard this, because not all Foundation Establishment cultivators were this strong, and Wang Ling was the only one who was this strong. Lai Mengmeng wasn't an outsider, and was very familiar with Father Wang. But it had already become an unspoken rule to not reveal Wang Ling's true realm to someone who didn't know the situation. Both Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Fatty Luo were well aware of this, so when they saw Wang Ling and Lai Mengmeng, they addressed him as Brother Ling. The main gate of the hospital was successfully smashed open by the ambulance, and the game plot progressed smoothly. After Wang Ling and the others entered the main gate, they saw the back of a figure with disheveled hair. It looked like a girl who was still wearing the blue and white striped hospital gown, but it was obvious that she wasn't in a normal state of mind. She stood in a corner with her back to Wang Ling and the others as she muttered something to herself. This scene was quite horrifying. Not only was this a game of death, it was also one that combined horror elements. Even though Wang Ling had always felt that he wouldn't be scared, this feeling made him a little uncomfortable. In contrast, Lai Mengmeng was clearly a veteran of many battles. He looked very excited as he directly walked over to the girl. She should be able to lead us to the room where we found the night vision camera. Based on how the plot develops, after we find the camera, the hospital's last remaining power source will be cut off. We can only rely on the night vision camera to continue triggering the plot. This game is really troublesome. Grenade throwing senior immortal sighed. If the plot could only be triggered by the night vision camera, then the sky I would not be as useful in this environment. Next, we just need to touch this girl and we should be able to trigger the plot. Lai Meng Meng reached out and pressed the girl's thin shoulder. The next moment, the girl turned to look at him as if she had been electrocuted. Her slightly loose hair parted slightly, and Lai Meng Meng could clearly see the madwoman's distorted face. Her face was festering as if it had been burned. She howled madly, and from this angle, the crazy woman's mutated shark teeth could be clearly seen. Lai Meng Meng had long since gotten used to these kinds of jump scares in games, but in this incomparably realistic environment, he was still so scared that he started panting heavily. He was so frightened that he retracted his hand, but this crazy woman grabbed his arm even faster. Lai Meng Meng had never imagined that this girl with such a thin and weak body would actually have such great strength. Not good. Grenade throwing senior immortal cried out in alarm, but it was already too late. The crazy woman had already firmly gripped Lai Meng Meng's arm, and then she opened her mouth and bit down viciously with her sharp, bloody teeth. There was a crack, and very quickly, the crazy woman's eyes widened in astonishment, because she saw a golden light wrap around Lai Meng Meng's arm, and the moment she bit down, the golden light had shattered her teeth. In just a split second, her teeth had been lost. Lai Meng Meng, Grenade throwing senior immortal, Fatty Luo, even Wang Ling couldn't deny that there were times when karma really was a very magical thing. If Lai Meng Meng hadn't gone through the script with Father Wang, he wouldn't have forgotten to take a shower for a few days and been asked by Mother Wang to wash himself clean. If he hadn't washed himself clean, he wouldn't have changed into the long johns that Mother Wang had given him. If he hadn't changed into the long johns, the crazy woman's teeth wouldn't have fallen out. Fortunately, although the crazy woman's teeth had all fallen out, the plot still unfolded smoothly. What kind of scene was this? A toothless crazy woman leading the way with a lifeless expression on her face was a miracle to Wang Ling from the bottom of his heart. So far, the plot is exactly the same as when I played the game back then. As Lai Meng Meng had said, the crazy woman led them to the door of a small room, and then silently left on her own. We should be able to find the night vision camera that will trigger the plot from here. Grenade throwing senior immortal nodded. Worried that something unforeseen would happen again, he was the first to open the door this time. However, nothing happened in the room this time, and it was unexpectedly quiet. Fatty Luo found the night vision camera that Lai Meng Meng had mentioned on the floor, as well as a hospital report. Because he had played the trial version of the game, Lai Meng Meng was very familiar with the contents of the report. If I remember correctly, this report has something to do with that crazy woman from before. The plot in the trial version was a simplified version, but now we can finally take a good look at the main plot. What does it say? Asked Grenade throwing senior immortal. Simply put, according to what's written in the report, this crazy woman was hospitalized because she suffered domestic violence back then and went insane. Before she entered the mental hospital, her husband had been beating her with a magic weapon the whole time. She used all her strength to bite my right arm before, which was actually a form of resistance to domestic violence after she went insane. Speaking up to this point, Lai Meng Meng recalled the terrifying scene when the crazy woman had bitten him, and he couldn't help shuddering. There's also information about her husband in this report. Her husband is a professional game player, but because he often loses matches and has a bad temper, he has developed the habit of beating his wife. Scumbag. Fatty Luo and Grenade throwing senior immortal said in unison. In fact, the outbreak of the biochemical crisis in the hospital was also caused by this crazy woman's husband. After the media exposed it, the madwoman's husband was diagnosed with mania, so he was also sent to a mental hospital for treatment. But during his treatment, he tried to escape the mental hospital many times. One time, when he was hiding in the psychiatric laboratory, he accidentally knocked over a box containing a virus. That was how the biochemical crisis started. Speaking up to this point, Lai Mengmeng suddenly looked surprised. The report actually mentions the magic weapon this man used to beat his wife? What magic weapon? Fatty Luo was very curious. Lai Mengmeng, it's called Death Announcement? Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal. Chapter 268. Death Proclamation? What's that? Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal thought the name was a little familiar. This can be considered a relatively famous modern magic treasure. It's shaped like a keyboard. Fatty Luo seemed to have heard of it before. It seems that you can raise your rage points by constantly smashing things. Wang Ling already didn't have the energy to ridicule this magic treasure and the plot between the female lunatic and her husband. But no matter how the game plot unfolded, before the game god revealed himself, Wang Ling wouldn't be able to directly track down the other party's true body after he turned into a pile of data. At that moment, Wang Ling suddenly thought of Little Black's benefits. It would be great if Little Black was here, then they could work together to catch the god. But now, the only way was to wait for the god of this game to lose his cool and reveal a flaw first. After Lai Mengmeng picked up the night vision camera, the entire mental hospital went completely dark. Whether it was the rooms or the corridors, everything became pitch black. Even as a veteran otaku player, Lai Mengmeng couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. TSK, that's a little scary. Brother Luo, have you sensed anyone else's aura? Asked Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal. Not yet. Fatty Luo frowned. I suspect that the other people entered a different game space than we did. We still don't know the goal of the mastermind behind the scenes, but for him to be able to set up such a big trap, he definitely isn't simple. What should we do next? That's the end of the trial. According to the plot, we should explore the place with this night vision camera. We'll find some clues and continue the plot. The female lunatic's husband and the ward number were specifically written in the appraisal report just now. I think we can go there and explore a little. Lai Mengmeng sorted out his thoughts and said. I saw the trailer before, and it seems that zombies will appear after we get the night vision camera. The game will design some iron cabinets and oil drums in the plot, so when we encounter zombies, it's best to hide in them. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal, we still have to hide? Wouldn't it be better to just kill them? Lai Mengmeng. You can try. Just as Lai Mengmeng had said, Outlast would indeed arrange for some zombies to hinder the development of the plot. The weakest were the normal soldiers like the crazy woman from before. Above them were the zombies whose appearance had completely mutated. They were also known as fatties. The last level was the gecko people. These zombies could use the walls to crawl at high speeds on their four limbs. In the trial version, some players also called it Voldemort. Holding the night vision camera, Lai Mengmeng walked along the corridor. When he saw the metal cabinet in the corridor, he stopped. Be careful, there's something ahead. Although Lai Mengmeng was just an ordinary person, he was still quite observant. When he saw the metal cabinet set up in the game appear next to him, he immediately knew that the road ahead wasn't going to be peaceful. Actually, from a long distance away, Wang Ling had already sensed that there were more than 10 minions hiding in the rooms to the right of the iron cabinet. As soon as Wang Ling walked over, they would immediately rush out. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal said softly, Brother Song, don't be afraid, I'll go take a look. Just as he walked past the iron cabinet on the side, a large group of figures immediately burst out of the rooms in front of them and staggered toward them. Holy shit! So many of them. Are they going to hide in the cabinet? They're definitely going to hide in the cabinet, right? Lai Mengmeng was startled by this scene. Sure enough, the shock of seeing a group of zombies charge toward him on the screen was completely different from when he was facing an army of zombies head-on. Brother Song, don't panic, I'll directly F***CK them up. Boom! Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal threw a sky bomb grenade at the zombies in front of them. Instantly, golden light shone in all directions and lightning flashed. A large number of zombies in front of them were blown to bits, but not all of them were dead. Some whose heads hadn't been blown off were still using their arms to crawl in their direction. Even if they were just a bunch of random soldiers, their regenerative abilities were amazing. As long as their brains were still intact, their bodies could continuously regenerate. Those zombies that had their lower bodies destroyed could only crawl for less than half a meter, and their new bodies had already reformed in the process of moving forward. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't say much. He directly strode forward and chopped off the heads of these minions with one slash of his sword. Sure enough, you still have to chop off their heads to fight these things? Fatty Luo smiled slightly and also joined the fight. He was even more violent than grenade throwing as he stretched out his hand and directly crushed the heads of these minions. The average realm of a smith actually wasn't high, and it could be said that there were very few people like Fatty Luo who could balance their realm and cultivation. Thus, it was very rare for a smith to be able to protect themselves in this kind of situation. From a distance, Wang Ling and Lai Mengmeng saw that the heads of these minions were so fragile in Fatty Luo's hands that they turned into pissing beef balls with one squeeze. Because of the skybomb grenade that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had thrown earlier, the nearby zombie minions had heard the commotion and come over, and more zombies had gathered. These zombies have probably been strengthened again. Their recovery abilities are too strong. After a while of slaughter, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Fatty Luo started to pant as they realized a very serious problem. In this game space, which had been combined with an illusion spell, there was a serious lack of spirit energy. They had been consuming it all this time, and if they didn't replenish it, they would run out sooner or later. Because of the lack of spirit energy, Fatty Luo was clearly feeling a little weak. Suddenly, there was a loud rumble in front of them, and a figure was swiftly approaching them. A big guy is coming. Fatty Luo's eyes widened in disbelief. This was a Voldemort, and it was astonishingly fast. Fatty Luo couldn't keep up with it. Although he didn't know how strong this Voldemort was, in terms of speed alone, it had already surpassed the soul formation stage. After all, this was an illusion set up by an itinerant immortal almighty, and the situation was more troublesome than grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had expected. Let's hide in the cupboard, how about? Lai Mengmeng suggested again. But before Lai Mengmeng could finish speaking, Wang Ling had already stepped forward. This Voldemort had come in a menacing manner. Its limbs were well developed, and the tendons in its arms and legs were as solid as a horned dragon's. Its eyes were already distorted, and the corners of its eyes were completely torn apart to reveal the whites of its eyes. Its dark red pupils stared straight at Wang Ling, meeting his gaze. A few seconds later, this Voldemort instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Then it straightaway turned its head, opened the iron cupboard at the back, and directly shrank inside. Seeing this scene, Lai Mengmeng's mind instantly flashed with a black question mark emoji. According to the game mechanism, shouldn't they be hiding in the cupboard? You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.